And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink. Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points. No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there. But Coach, we have another half to play. I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that? Yes, Coach? Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Talent-wise, if you go, speaking of Emmett, both of these guys, talent-wise, if you go the top 10 backs you ever seen, at best, both of them are going to be on the back end. Highest, they're going to be number 8, number 9, perhaps even number 10. But Once again, when it's a game that you have to win and your life depends on it, give me Emmett every time. Okay. If your life depends on it.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, me personally, I would have picked I agree with your pick at Walter Payton. Totally agree with that. Emmitt Smith, not so much. Not so much. Now, he did come up clutch with the Cowboys, but he was running behind the greatest offensive line of all time. Okay. I would have chosen Barry Sanders.
Sports from back in the day. From Atlanta, it's Dana on the mic, talking old school legends, bringing history to life. We go deep like a spiral in the Superdome. Back when athletes left the game due to talking alone. Jordan fadeaways, Jackie in the zone, Ali in the ring, man, he stood all alone. From the Negro Leagues to the ABA, we break it all down, yeah, the classic way. It's Charles from the district, straight out the boot. Southern University pride, repping truth in the booth. From Baton Rouge to the nation's capital, legends on deck. Yeah, we factual tales of the greats, gold chains and all. Baseball, who dreams in that football brawl? No clickbait, no fluff, just the facts we say. It's historically speaking sports from back in the game. So sit back, tune in, and hit replay. It's historically speaking sports, the classic way.
Okay, who would you rather have at quarterback? Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Dan Marino? Who would you have at running back from the NFC? Barry Sanders or Emmitt Smith or Walter Payton? Who would be your starting tight end for the AFC? Tony Gonzalez or Antonio Gates or Travis Kelce? In this edition of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, Charles Combs and I, Dana Augusta, will be answering those questions and many, many more, inevitably starting debates as we choose our all-time Pro Bowl team. Charles, as a New Orleans Saints fan, will select the best he has ever seen from the NFC, and I, a LA Charger fan, will pick the best of the best from the AFC. We will talk about quarterbacks that had water in their veins and commanded dynasties, skill position players who rewrote the record books, and linemen who owned the trenches. Who earns a spot on this all-time team selected by us, two football fanatics and sports history commentators? History has given us legends, and now we make the call on this episode of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. The podcast that gives you the best of sports from back in the day right here on the Sports History Network.
Hey there. Welcome to Music Meets Sports, where sports legends meet custom soundtracks. Founded by music producer Ronald Tyke Oliver, Music Meets Sports was created to bridge generations, educate fans, and celebrate the greatness of both current and former athletes. We craft original songs about heroes in basketball, football, baseball, boxing, and beyond, highlighting their struggles and victories. Across all musical genres, we reintroduce fans to their favorite athletes in a way they've never heard before. From Babe Ruth to Reggie White, from rising WNBA stars to timeless NFL great stream, or download our music now on Apple Music, Amazon, and Spotify. Visit musicmeetsports.org to explore the catalog, hear new releases, and join the movement that's preserving sports history, one song at a time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on this Sunday night, the Sunday night of the divisional weekend portion of the NFL playoffs. I'm Dana Augusta, joined again by my partner in crime, Charles Combs. And Chuck, how we doing tonight, man?
All right, man. Man, great to have a 3-day weekend. Just trying to stay warm, man. Let's get to it.
And as we're recording this, we are recording this on Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend. So Chuck has the day off tomorrow. I'm working a half a day. So not everybody could be lucky as Chuck is all completely off. So he gets to sleep in tomorrow in the cold weather, wherever you may be on this weekend. And for most of America, it is a very, very cold weekend watching football games that are taking place in snow. But on this edition of the show, we're going to be putting together our all-time Pro Bowl players. These are players that we have seen in our lifetime that we think are the best of the best at each position. There's going to be some that a lot of people may disagree with, I think, on my end. And just to let everybody know, I'm going to be selecting players from the AFC since my favorite team is the Chargers. And since Charles's favorite team is the Saints, he's been relegated to the NFC pretty much. So, Chuck, let's talk about that for a second before we really get started. I have certain things, certain predictions that, knowing the way that you are as a fan of the sport and what you look for in certain players, I have certain ideas, I think, of where you may be going. I don't want to give anything away, but I think that your team is going to be, especially dealing with the NFC, I think that your team is going to be something of a smash mouth type of team, emphasis on the running game. Am I in the ballpark on that a little bit, or what?
You ballpark. But my team was kind of what I focused on, because we had the obvious suspects on both sides for both conferences. So it's hard to kind of whittle it down in terms of who you're going to select and who you're not going to select. And there's probably going to be a handful of surprises that I have in store for yourself as well as the listeners tonight, because what I really, really took into account was obviously all of these guys that's even up for consideration are great.
Yeah. But
what I took it as was, okay, my team versus your team, we meet 12 o'clock in the park.
Yeah.
Losing coach, head is on the guillotine and rolling at 3.
That's it.
So got the win, or else somebody head getting cut off on the getting guillotine tonight. So you got the win. So
right.
I picked my players with that in mind.
Okay.
If I had to win, and my life depended on it, the guys I can go to that I know I can count on. They may not necessarily be the most glamorous pick, but they're going to be guys that I think our viewers will agree you can trust some of these guys when the chips are down, or as when my dad used to say, it's nut cutting time.
There you go.
So that's why I went, and me knowing you, I already know how you went. You went high profile, high flying, the most exciting, the viewership experience in mind, who's the most fun to watch, et cetera, et cetera. I already know that's exactly what you did.
Well, believe it or not, I mean, offensively, of course, I went that way, but defensively, especially with some of the dogs that was on the NFC in the AFC on defense during our time period, which only goes back to only like 1980, from 1980 till now. There are going to be some situations where if we got the lead, I feel surely confident that we're going to hold the lead, with some of the players that I have on my defense. So, and of course on my offense, of course it's going to be fun. Of course it's going to be high flying. Of course it's going to be high scoring, and that's what I like. I love that. If those of you who know me, and those of you who have been listening for a while, I love offense. I love offense, and Chuck knows this better than anybody. I love offense. Okay. Was there any positions on the line, any positions anywhere in our positions that you was like, oh my God, I want to put this person, but I'm leaving this person out? Or was there any one position that just gave you the most trouble?
Receiver gave me a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I could see that in the NFC.
Running back did. Also, defensive end gave me a lot of trouble. And what gave me the most trouble was the tight end position. Because for all of the prominent tight ends were in our lifetime on your side. NFC tight ends, just to name a few really quick. You got guys like Kellen Winslow Sr., you got guys like Gronkowski, you got guys like Tony Gonzalez, guys like that. And even like obviously like Tony Gonzalez, he came to play for the Falcons for a handful of years in his twilight. Right. When you say Tony Gonzalez, anyone our age is going to look at him as a Kansas City Chief. So similar to our baseball, I like a lot of the players that kind of played in both conferences. It's kind of like, okay, what would they be most remembered as? Right. And like in his case, I didn't even consider him because although he played for the Falcons, he was a Kansas City Chief through and through. Now, another caveat I have to add, though, is like you got to remember during our lifetime, NFC won 13 straight Super Bowls. Yes, that's something else that I had to consider. In resounding fashion, game was over with by halftime. So, it was kind of like in the trenches in particular, like whereas the tight end position, you may have had the advantage, or even perhaps quarterback overall as a group. I think I'm going to have the best overall quarterback, but it's just strengths and weak strengths relative to one another that lies on each side.
There you go. So with all that in mind, let's get started. And of course, we're going to get started with the quarterback position. And with me being an AFC guy and having to deliberate the quarterback position, it was very difficult. It was the most difficult position for me to whittle down. Okay. These are the quarterbacks that I did not pick. Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Warren Moon, Dan Fouts, Bernie Kosar, Ken Anderson, Phillip Rivers, Dan Marino, Ken O'Brien, Jim Kelly, Pat Mahomes. I did not pick them. And you cannot go wrong with either one of those guys. So with that in mind, my two quarterbacks, and just to give you a little quick before I get into that, Chuck picks two, I pick two quarterbacks, a backup and a starter. My backup quarterback is none other than Tom Brady. Tom Brady's my backup, which means my starting quarterback is none other than John Albert Elway. 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 1987 NFL MVP, and the most valuable player of Super Bowl 33. That's my starter. Tom Brady, I know, 7 Super Bowl championships, 15-time Pro Bowl, 3-time MVP, 649 touchdown passes, 3-time All-Pro, and close to 90,000 yards passing. Now, you're probably wondering, why in the world did I put him as my backup? Simple thing. John Elway may not be in Tom Brady's class as far as throwing the ball and overall just accomplishments. But no quarterback can beat you as many ways as John Elway could. And in what I would call my game planning scheme, John Elway would start, but he's coming in the fourth quarter, whether we're down or not, because I know that if we happen to be down, he's going to find a way to win the game for us. So John Elway is my starting quarterback with Tom Brady as my backup.
Pretty good picks. But let me ask, because see, like a lot of what I also considered that I neglected to mention when I kind of defined my methodology was also old school rules versus the new school rules.
Okay.
Like when it comes to certain positions, I definitely favored the old school over the new school because the old adage is, okay, would John Elway be a knockdown, drag-out superstar if he played now?
I think so.
That is a resounding absolutely yes, because he would have thrived in any era. Whereas a lot of these other quarterbacks, and Tom Brady came kind of at the end of the old school era, but the majority of his success were under the new rules. A, B, he was the benefit of a lot of rule changes. Tuck rule. You can't hit the man below the knee no more because he blew his knee out in 2007. Yeah. So the question is, if you throw Tom Brady back in those previous eras where it was just organized mayhem, anything goes, would he still be a Hall of Famer? I think that's in question. Well, we do know for a fact that he, nor Rodgers, nor Breeze would have lasted to 40 years old.
No, they would not. No, they wouldn't have. Not a chance. Not a chance. I mean, I see what you're saying. I think that with Brady, as my backup, that's where I kind of reason why I went putting him as my backup, because I look at it as this. Tom Brady, as good as he was, did he have the toughness as John Elway did? And I don't think he did. And I don't think he does. But at the same time, John Elway, he could beat you with his play calling at the line of scrimmage. He could beat you with his overall, brains of the game, but he also could beat you with his legs. He was one of the most athletic, great quarterbacks we've ever seen. Somebody who on any given Sunday could rush for 100 yards, at least earlier in his career. And his escapability was something that we wouldn't see again until maybe Michael Vick. Right. So that's the reason why I put John Elway as my starter.
Just to put a nice bow on your selections before I venture into mine, just for me, like I mentioned, the premise of my picks were my team gets yours at the local park, 12 o'clock. Loser gets on the guillotine. And that's how I broach it. And I know for me, with my pass rush and some of the players I'm going to have, I would be more than happy to see Tom Brady in the game at quarterback as opposed to John Elway, because to your point earlier, John Elway, he can move, he can escape pressure. You can roll him out, he can bootleg, he can evade and slide in the pocket while keeping his eyes downfield.
And don't forget that arm.
That's literally what I was about to say. You're always alive as long as he has the ball and he's up and you're within range. Because I've seen him make 70 yards throws across the field from one sideline to the next, 70 yards in the air. The DB think there's no way he can reach him, and then lo and behold, boom. So I think so that's how I ventured it. But anyway, on to my picks.
Okay.
Following quarterbacks, only one of these I strongly considered, but I didn't pick them. I strongly considered Steve Young, but decided now not to. Then also you have Drew Brees, you have Aaron Rodgers, you have Brett Favre. None of them made the cut for me. None of them. Even though I strongly considered Steve Young, and Steve Young would be a player as great as he was. Man, if the dude played now, good God, if he played now, he would just be phenomenal because today's game suits his talents and his abilities.
And think about it, think about, not to cut you off, but think about a young Steve Young when he was like with Tampa Bay. Of course, he had nothing around him in Tampa Bay, but he was way more athletic when he was at Tampa Bay than he was when he was with San Francisco. And when he was at San Francisco, he was athletic, more athletic than Montana. But the younger Steve Young was absolutely dangerous.
Correct. So I strongly considered him, but at the last minute, I backed out in favor of this guy. None other than Kurt Warner, baby. Kurt Warner. He's the backup. Why you may ask, and this may be a peculiar pick. Why? Because I also think a lot of times in this game between our two teams, everybody is supremely talented on both sides. Even the guys for considerate, like those many quarterbacks you considered but didn't even bother to include. All of them are supremely talented. So in a game like this, toughness, determination, able to overcome adversity, and the penchant for accuracy without mistakes, I think are premiums. Yeah. And Kurt Warner embodies all of those things. His journey is well chronicled from, graduating college, bagging groceries. He went from went from bagging groceries to the Arena League and then went to the Rams. Still remember Trent Green busted his knee and Dick Vermeer jumped on there and cried. And we're like, we got to rally around Kurt Warner, and everybody like, let's do the bum. Then he only goes out there and throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns each of his first 4 starts, and everybody like, what the hell, And then just quick rundown of this brother: first ballot Hall of Fame, 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time MVP, Super Bowl MVP, then on top of that, showing the adversity once again, where it's like, the Patriots, they had some success. Same went for the Broncos. The dude took 2 perennial doormats to a total of 3 Super Bowls, winning one of them. It wasn't like he went to a situation where when it was his turn, he was with the Green Bay Packers, and then they already had this well-established culture and infrastructure around him, where all he had to do was kind of plug in and don't disrupt the boat. No, the dude went to the Rams would just have been awful for like a decade when he started in St. Louis. And then the man went to the New York Giants, had mixed success there, got supplanted by Eli Manning, and then went to the Arizona Cardinals for seemingly the ride out his final leg of his career behind one Matt Leinart, but Matt Leinart was a bum, of course. So he got pressed into service, and guess what? You stay ready, you don't have to get ready. He answered the call and led the Arizona Cardinals to the Super Bowl, which is one Santonio Holmes toenail from being a 2-time Super Bowl champion, one of which is with the Arizona Cardinals. So Kurt Warner, my backup quarterback.
Okay, so your backup quarterback is Kurt Warner, which, I could see that because Tom Brady is a system quarterback that had the longevity. Kurt Warner, if you had to put an adjective or on his production or his, if you had to make one really good descriptive word about his quarterbacking style, that would have to be precision. It was like if it was a 3-step drop or a 5-step drop, as soon as that back leg hit, the ball was out, and it was always on target. And he had like this sidearm delivery, and that was kind of that I think was kind of that was really cool about him. But his precision passing, throwing it to Ricky Pro and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Oz Hakeem and Marshall Faulk coming out of the backfield. That it was that Greatest Show on Turf Rams team, especially in the early 2000s, was something. It was fun to watch, and it was just amazing that they just didn't win more with the type of offense that they had. Now the defense was, average at best, but Kurt Warner, heck, that's a really good. I have no problems with that pick at all. Especially with him being a backup. Now your starting quarterback, I think I kind of know where you're going with this one.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. And just one more thing about Kurt Warner. Like you mentioned, the Rams defense was very, very average to solid. But another advantage of having Kurt Warner, he could cut. He was so explosive with his precision and fully utilizing the weapons at his disposal. A lot of times he could cut the opposing team's playbook in half because within the blink of an eye, he's up 3 scores. And so whatever your game plan was in terms of running the football, that's out of the door. So now
that's out the window,
he just cut the playbook in half to make it much easier for his defense to help close out a ball game. But on to my starter once again. It's obvious. It's a no-brainer. It's none other than Cool Joe. This is it, Joe Montana. It's just no-brainer. To me, the second greatest quarterback of all times, second to only Johnny Unitas, man. It's just Joe Montana, man. What else can you say, man? 117, 47 as a starter. 63.2% completion percentage, but this is when, even though the West Coast system, kind of short passes, he still used to go downfield quite a bit. 40K passing yards, 40,551 to be exact. Had 273 touchdowns and 139 interceptions, and then just first ballot Hall of Fame, 8-time Pro Bowl, 3-time All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time MVP of the league, 3-time Super Bowl MVP. 1980s starting quarterback, 1980s decade team Hall of Fame, 1989 offensive player of the year, just insane, Joe. And you just look at what he managed to accomplish, man. Started off the decade by basically putting an end to the doomsday defense. That's what he did. He basically ignited the 49er dynasty by beating the Cowboys, that thrilling game we talked about in 1981. Then, he had to contend with the Bears defense. He had to remember, what was that? Was that 88 when he went into Chicago and won the NFC Championship game in the cold? Beat them, then, he had to play. He went toe-to-toe with those Giants team. They tended to have his number, though. And just all of the great teams that he had, the Redskins, all of the great teams he had to battle in the 80s. And then he still came up with 4 Super Bowls and 4 appearances. And then, the hit by Leonard Marshall, basically seemingly ended his career. So he was out for a year and a half, 2 seasons, then came back with the Kansas City Chiefs and managed to lead them to an AFC title game against the Marv Levy, K-Gun offense, Buffalo Bills. They got blown out, but he got the Chiefs to the AFC title game. So Joe Montana, that's my starting quarterback.
Yeah, Joe Montana, is that he is the epitome of the West Coast offense. Bill Walsh started it in the 70s with Ken Anderson when he was an assistant with Cincinnati, but he was the epitome of that West Coast offense. Startling statistic about Joe Montana: threw all those passes in the Super Bowl, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, never threw an interception in the Super Bowl, which is astounding. And, twice against the Cincinnati Bengals, which that second Bengals team that made it to the Super Bowl was a very good defensive team. Beat Denver, in Super Bowl 24, beat the Dolphins in Super Bowl 19. Neither one of those defenses outstanding. They were essentially offensive juggernaut teams, but Joe Montana, was the man, and still, and even though I don't agree with it, I think the greatest quarterback ever is John Elway, but Joe Montana is right up there, but that's just my personal opinion,
Sure.
Moving on, my running backs. Now, again, we choose two running backs and a fullback, and my two running backs, and my two running backs that I have is my starter. Of course, it has to be, as a Chargers fan, had to be LaDainian Tomlinson. And my other running back is, and this might be a surprise to you, Chuck, and it was to me because I went down to look back at his career and I was like, I know I love this. It's like I love this guy. He's somewhat underrated. Played his whole career in the AFC, but with two different teams. My starting running back, LaDainian Tomlinson. My backup, Curtis Martin. Yes, Curtis Martin. The reason why,
Consider?
huh?
Who did you consider? Who else was on your consideration list?
I thought about Terrell Davis. I thought about Marcus Allen. But I decided to go with Curtis Martin. Why? Because of the type of offense that we're going to be running. He's a very good receiver out of the backfield. We're going to be throwing a lot, okay? And Curtis Martin is underrated. You think about his stats. 5-time Pro Bowler, 14,000 yards rushing. He's a Hall of Fame running back, 1995 Offensive Rookie of the Year. On that year, he's had 1,487 yards rushing and 14 touchdowns. Finished his career with 90 touchdowns and like I said, over 14,000 yards rushing. And mostly for those years with the Jets, which was a terrible team, that's all they had. And he was the sole focus of everybody's defense, playing for those very bad Jet teams. He still put up Hall of Fame numbers. So I got him as just straight toughness. And of course, LaDainian Tomlinson, 145 yards, 145 touchdowns, 2006 MVP, still holds the record for most touchdowns in a single season. 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, Hall of Famer, the greatest running back in Charger history. That goes without saying.
Daniel Tomlinson, he was a good player. Now I have a qualm with both of these picks, by the way.
Really? Okay.
Do. Yes, I do. Let's get it. Let's get it. Okay. Chris Martin, right? Okay. Fine, dandy, very good player, deserving of the Hall of Fame. Did he go first ballot? Because he shouldn't have.
I think he was second year. He went in the second year.
Fair enough. 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Number 1, do you ever remember Curtis Martin run, first of all? Secondly, have you ever heard anyone say, this guy's going to be the next Curtis Martin? Quick.
No, nobody has. But I think that the reason why that is because he's so underrated. Think about those teams that he played against. But think about those teams that he played with. Okay? I put Curtis Martin on my team simply because of this. I love his running style. He's underrated. He's a tough runner, and he's essentially the same type of runner as LaDainian Tomlinson. Now, if you tune in to see who my fullback is, you understand why I got Curtis Martin and LaDainian Tomlinson as my two tailbacks. Okay?
Is.
Huh?
I already know who your fullback is going to be.
Who is my fullback? Who do you think it is?
It's going to be Lorenzo Neal.
No.
It's not?
It's not. It's not.
All right. Okay.
It's not Lorenzo Neal. He was up for consideration. What was he up for consideration? But he's not my fullback. Okay, but back to the lecture at hand. Curtis Martin, LaDainian Tomlinson are my 2 starting tailbacks. Okay. LaDainian Tomlinson, explosive, multifaceted, Very talented running back, very versatile quarterback. Both of them very versatile in the passing game. Tomlinson has thrown touchdown passes. I want versatility in my running backs because of the type of offense that we're going to be running. When you see my fullback and my receiver, you understand why I picked these. There's a method to my madness, trust me. And besides, my prerequisite for running backs is toughness and versatility. That's why I got Tomlinson and Martin.
Anders? But anyway,
Benny Anders, no.
Kimball Anders.
Kimball Anders, no.
Okay, but
No.
anyway, my dissension regarding Tomlinson is this, man. He's a tremendous running back, tremendous talent, one of the best I've ever seen. But he's always had a tendency to not come up as big as he should in big moments, with the exception of that 2006 title game when you guys blew the game to the Patriots. We talked about that several episodes back,
right.
With the exception of that game. Because what I always remember from him is the following two games. The first game is the following year, 2007, in New England. It was either 2007 or 2008 when Phillip Rivers played Phillip Rivers and LT LaDainian Tomlinson, I'm sorry. There's only one LT. Was seemingly nursing injuries going into the AFC title game in Foxborough.
Right.
Phillip Rivers got out there, gave it everything he had. Come to find out subsequently, he did it on a fully torn ACL and still was out there with his troops. If I remember correctly, LaDainian Tomlinson had like some type of groin strain. And then, you remember he tried to go one series, then he'll spend the rest of the series with the jacket on and on the bike, trying to give his team hope. Like, dude, you know you're not playing. Get off the damn bike. Quit trying to BS us like you're going to play today. You're not going to play. And he just, like, if Phillip can get out there with a torn ACL, and I know the position requirements are right. Different. Right. Come on, man. You got to do that.
Well, in defense of LaDainian Tomlinson, okay, he was nursing a groin injury that had been diagnosed like before the season even ended. Okay. And he was dealing with that all through the playoffs up to that point. Okay. Secondly, Phillip Rivers went out there with a torn ACL, yes, but it's a totally different position. You basically playing quarterback essentially out of the shotgun the whole time. LaDainian Tomlinson's number one forte was explosiveness, and he had none at all. If you go back and watch that game, I was like, bruh, go sit down. Just stop. Because we're not going to beat the Patriots anyway, because they were undefeated that year. We had shocked the Colts the week before. I'm like, bruh, don't even try to risk your career, which incidentally was like the last bright moment of his career anyway. But still, his explosiveness was his game, and he had none at all. So he gave it his all, he gave it his try, but he just couldn't do it. Secondly, about that team, and as a side, that was North Turner's first year, which his tenure with the Chargers was an absolute joke. They never should have fired Schottenheimer, but that was like a whole thing between him and the general manager, which is a long, drawn-out story anyway. But that's the reason why I picked LaDainian Tomlinson, his explosiveness. But Curtis Martin does have the more toughness than Tomlinson, but in plus two, he's a Charger. I could leave him out, Okay, so who was your running? I think I know who your running backs are, but go ahead.
I think you're going to be kind of surprised because initially I misread the email and had 4 running backs, but you just corrected me. So I'm going to tell you as a result, everybody that I had for consideration. I had obviously Eric Dickerson.
Yeah.
Barry Sanders.
Uh-huh.
Adrian Peterson, Marshall Faulk. Boy, I would have loved to have Roger Craig in there. That's who I really wanted to pick, but he just didn't. I think he should be a Hall of Famer because how pioneering he was, but
Yeah.
he didn't do enough to be able to be selected for this game. So my three backs, remember, at the outset I said, if this game came down and my life depended on this game, that's how I'm picking these players. It came down to three, man. Number one, obvious, Walter Payton. Obvious.
You got to go to Walter Payton. You got to. You know, that was one of the. Yeah.
Then the last two, Walter Payton speaks for himself. Then the last two came down to a couple. I think this where I may surprise you at. The last two came down to Emmitt Smith and John Riggins. That was my last two. You know, because like I said once again, now both of these players, especially by this juncture of Riggins' career, he had kind of reinvented himself from being an explosive breakaway back earlier in his career with the Jets to when he got to the Redskins. He was a bit older, still was fast, but not as explosive as he once was. So he kind of reinvented himself into the ultimate power back, the power back. And then you got Emmitt Smith too. Now, obviously, talent-wise, if you go, speaking of Emmitt, both of these guys, talent-wise, if you go the top 10 backs you ever seen, at best, both of them are going to be on the back end. Highest, they're going to be number 8, number 9, perhaps even number 10. But once again, when it's a game that you have to win and your life depends on it, give me Emmitt every time. Okay. If your life depends on it.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, me personally, I would have picked. I agree with your pick at Walter Payton. Totally agree with that. Emmitt Smith, not so much. Not so much. Now, he did come up clutch with the Cowboys, but he was running behind the greatest offensive line of all time. Okay, I would have chosen Barry Sanders because Barry Sanders essentially was 1,500 yards away from breaking Walter Payton's record with essentially no offensive line, basically doing it all by himself. Okay. Emmitt Smith had the benefit of running behind the greatest offensive line pretty much of all time. Okay. And you give me two great Emmitt Smith runs, I can give you 7 to 10 great Barry Sanders runs. Okay. But what I think is definite, and it's not necessarily Barry Sanders' fault, but when you think of clutch runs by Emmitt Smith, they all occurred during the playoffs, which Barry Sanders only played in 2 playoff games in his entire career, maybe 3. You know,
Go ahead. I mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
But at the same time, you can't. I would have gone Barry Sanders. I can understand why you went with Emmitt Smith because of the clutch factor, which I agree with. And going back to mine. My 2 running backs, Tomlinson and Curtis Martin, they're both solid running backs. And in the scheme that we're running offensively, you understand why. Is their versatility and their ability to do multiple things is important. And both of them were, and basically both of them were essentially carbon copies of each other. They weren't that big. They're decent speed. Could run routes well, so that was the reason why I went with that. Now, you had Walter Payton, again, have no qualms with that at all. Emmitt Smith, okay, I give you that one. I originally thought that you was going to go Walter Payton and Eric Dickerson. That's what I thought you were going to do.
I wanted to go with Dick. As great as Dick was, now, all of this is true because I throw Dickerson, Sanders, Adrian Peterson for sure in this boat. Obviously, had Eric Dickerson, Adrian Peterson, Barry Sanders played behind him in slide, they would have ran for 2,000 yards multiple times easily.
Yeah.
Obviously. However, my problem with Barry Sanders is as follows. This has always been my problem with him. Number one, Barry, he can get me 80 yards at any time.
Right.
But he can't get me 1 damn yard when I absolutely got to have 1 damn yard.
That's
he can't
true.
do it.
That's fair. That is
The-
truly fair.
The Green Bay game, remember? Okay, his line ain't no good, all that. What's the excuse for -1 yards rushing in the playoffs?
In a playoff game, right.
And another thing, okay, Eric Dickerson and both Adrian Peterson, they're vastly superior backs. They're gonna, they can give you 25 carries for 250 yards, right?
Yeah.
But guess what? In all probability, they're gonna give you 1 or 2 fumbles to go along with that.
That's exactly what I was thinking, especially with
I mean?
Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson can give you like a 200-yard game, but how many times is he going to fumble?
You remember in that game against the Saints, that 2009 NFC Championship game?
Yeah.
He had like 4 freaking fumbles, and the Saints should have won that game going away. But you remember they kept trying to scoop and score every time,
Right?
Instead of just fall on the ball. So the possession would revert back to Minnesota because they were recovering and all of that, right? So I got Emick because and then even this with Barry Sanders, right? Another underrated element of running back is being in the right place in the right time in pass protection. And against your team, you see that streaking guy, like I know Junior Seau is going to be on the team. So I'll just add him now. He comes streaking in that hole. The pressure, Joe. I am fully confident that Emmett can stick his nose in there and stonewall him on that blitz.
Yeah.
Whereas any of these other backs, Sanders, because Eric, if Eric ain't running the ball, he doesn't care. So but Barry Sanders, is he going to pick up that block? No. And like I said, if I lose the game, my head is on the guillotine at the end. So I got to have people that I know, like even though Barry may give you 25 and 250, Emmett may only give you 25 for 152.
Right.
But third and 1, he's going to pick it up every single time. 4th and goal, he's going to pick it up every single time. And he's not going to fumble the ball. Hence, I really wanted to go with John Riggins too. So, but because he's in the same realm, but Emmitt Smith.
Okay. My fullback, okay, he is listed on Pro Football Reference as a running back. But you took a little liberty and made him a fullback just because of how big he is. Okay. Bettis was a consideration. I didn't choose him.
Okay.
Lorenzo Neal was a strong consideration. I didn't choose him either. But in my offense, the fullback is going to get the ball. Okay. So I went with this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a feeling that my compatriot here is going to lose his mind. I'm ready for this, and I've been ready for this for so long. My starting fullback is none other than the Nigerian nightmare, Christian Okoye. What was that, Chuck? You broke up.
That is not a bad pick at all. Now, my only question for that would be, obviously, very strong runner, very, very strong runner. Not much of a receiver, but my only question would be, obviously, he has the physical ability to lead in the hole and block for your tailbacks. Obviously, he has that for sure. He has the size, strength, speed, and all that. But does he have the want to and the ability in terms of the knowledge? Because to my recollection, they had Kimball Landers was the fullback, and then they had that two-headed monster at first. Then it was two-headed with him, Barry Word, with him getting the lion's share of the carries. Then eventually, as some slippage and Word and Okoye began to manifest, they moved Harvey Williams in there too. So it was kind of like a three-headed monster. That would be the only question that I would have for that. Other than that, I have no problem with that pick.
In the early part of his career, Christian Okoye was a very good blocking back, who could actually block, but once he started getting the ball more, Marty Schottenheimer decided not to use him as a blocker so much, but he realized that Kimball Anders was a better blocker than Okoye was. But that was one of the things that he continuously worked on during his career with the Chiefs, is that he became a very good blocker. The only thing really wanted me to put him in there is the fact that, one, his size, 6'1", 260 pounds, running the football. He finished with 4,897 yards, 40 touchdowns, two-time Pro Bowler, 1989 Offensive Player of the Year. So, and he was a devastating runner. If we get into short yardage, or if we have to go into something of a 4-minute offense, you don't mind giving him the ball. And with go one back and 5 wide receiver, one back, or 2 tight ends with one back, and he's the only back. Why not? So my offense is going to be very, very diverse, depending upon the situation. So that's the reason why I chose Okoye.
You're a good pick. Against my front seven that I got, nothing doing. Nothing doing. You know what I mean? So against my front seven, doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But very good pick, but I actually don't have a problem with that pick. And I applaud you for the ingenuity.
Yeah.
That was very good and very unorthodox, but very, very effective pick that I agree with 1,000,000,000%. Yes.
Now that's a shock right there, because I thought you were going to lose your mind. Like, what do you think? I really did.
He was a very good player. He was on the Hall of Fame track, but obviously with his running style and the way football was back then, longevity, just, you're running that hard and you run seeking contact. And, every time you go into that front seven, you hit everybody once, but everybody else hit you once too. You deliver one blow, they deliver 4, 5, 6 blows to you. No matter how special of a specimen you are, it's only so much of that you can take. Hence his very, very his lack of longevity.
Right.
I would like to add.
Yeah. So who was your fullback?
My fullback. I really wanted Lorenzo Neal so bad, because he started out with the Saints. He played a lot of years in the NFC, but then when I started taking a closer look at his career, most of his prominence and accolades occurred in the AFC instead. Yeah. So because of that, it was kind of like the same thing as Tony Gonzalez. I kind of considered him an AFC player.
Right. Okay.
So it came down to 2 guys. He, like most people think, Moose Johnson. I never even considered Moose Johnson.
That's what I thought you were going to go with. No, I thought you were going to go with Moose Johnson.
No, he was just all right to me. So I'm already making concessions in natural God-gifted ability by picking Emmett over all of those other people. So hell, I ain't finna turn around and do it again. So my fullback is Larry Centers. That's my fullback.
That's a very good pick, because Larry Centers, even though he was a fullback, was very versatile. He was a very good pass-catching fullback. He was a very good blocking fullback. Yes. Very versatile for those Cardinal teams in the late 80s, early 90s. Very, very underrated guy. Very underrated guy.
Yeah, 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champ. Who the hell he won the Super Bowl with? He won. That one has me stumped. Let me look at the stats right quick, because that one has me stumped, because they have him as a Super Bowl. Okay, he's Phoenix, Arizona. Oh, he played with New England at the tail end at age 35, his final year in the league. In 2003, he was on the he was on the Patriots that year and all of that. But I like them for basically. You listed out everything that made him appealing to be in my lineup pretty much. And like I said, a lot of the intangibles are very important. To your point, he played for some god-awful
Yes.
Cardinal teams, some god awful Cardinal teams, but by teammates and peers alike, opponents alike, he always came in, put his hard hat on, clocked in, and gave you a full 100% day's work every single time.
Now I'm trying to remember, was that? I think it was Stump Mitchell. It wasn't Larry Sanders, but it was Stump Mitchell was the first running back ever with 100 catches in a season. I think that was Stump Mitchell. I think. I don't think it was Larry Sanders, but you think of those Cardinal teams of the early to late 90s, that's really all they had on offense. It was at the tail end of Neil Lomax's career. This was before Jake Plummer,
Boomer Esiason for a while.
Yeah, Boomer Esiason was with them for a while. You're right. Wow. I mean, you think back of those Cardinal teams. You think of the Cardinals of the 90s. I only think of Larry Sanders, Tim McDonald, and pretty much that's it.
Aeneas Williams.
Aeneas Williams, right. And that's it.
Eric Hill was solid.
Yeah.
Then after that, rest of them, you remember they had Tim Rosenbach, for God's sakes.
Oh, man. My God. That's a name I forgot about. My goodness. Oh, my goodness.
You don't even have to second the motion to ratify him being a bum, man. He just was bad. He was awful, So, yeah.
Wow. Moving on to wide receiver. 4 wide receivers, okay? And my wide receiving core, I'm going with 2 starters and 2 reserves. And I tell you what, to basically talk about my receiving core, there's one word. And it's not what you think, Chuck. It's not a deep threat. It's possession. Possession receivers, because our offense is going to be purely precision, okay? My 2 starting receivers, Tim Brown of the Raiders and Charlie Joyner of the Chargers. Those are my 2 starting receivers. What you think?
I do acknowledge it's very interesting, but now that I think about the landscape, when it comes to receivers, you kind of like we spoke very briefly before we came on the air tonight. When I think about receivers, you have similar issues to what I had at tight end. You have similar, like I mentioned, like for the listeners very briefly, we were talking about trying to get an idea of what one another had. We didn't specify.
Right.
But I was like, we were talking about where we had the hardest time coming up with something. And I mentioned tight end because obviously all of the prominent tight ends of any note during the time period that we watch football, the overwhelming majority of them are in the AFC.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to wide receiver,
it's all in the NFC.
For the NFC.
It's all in the NFC.
The AFC is kind of barren when it comes to receivers. Now, I'm kind of surprised by the Charlie Joyner pick. Not saying he's unworthy because he definitely is. Tim Brown, I could see that, but I was kind of
No, I haven't. I haven't told you. I haven't been to my other 2 receivers, and Andre Reed is not one of them, even though he was under strong consideration.
Yeah.
Andre Reed was under strong consideration. Wesley Walker was under strong consideration. Webster Slaughter was under consideration. But my other 2 receivers, Hines Ward of the Steelers, Super Bowl MVP, and Marvin Harrison.
Very tough. Hines Ward is very tough. Like a lot of times I think he's overrated as a receiver. But in terms of, to your point, kind of very similar to my Emmett pick.
Yeah.
When it comes to winning games, he's the man for the job. Because, like a lot of times the difference between winning and losing is, he's one of the best blocking, perhaps the best blocking receiver of all time. And, and in this type of game, somebody with his blocking ability, especially with LaDainian Tomlinson, he could spring him a block that can turn a 15-yard gain into perhaps a 75-yard game, which may be the difference in the ball game. So I don't have a problem with that. I didn't never think Tim Brown was always to be, although great, kind of like Bernard Hopkins is in boxing. Like guys like Roy Jones got, and Floyd Mayweather to agree. Other guys had much higher peaks.
Yeah.
But he has the longevity over all of them.
Well, one thing about Tim Brown I liken to he really didn't become a really good Hall of Famer. He's one of those players that has always been better when he wasn't the main star. You know what I mean? Yes. It was like he became really, really good when Jerry Rice got to the Raiders, and he wasn't like the main weapon. He became a secondary weapon, And so I picked him, and I picked Joyner. Well, Tim Brown, 100 touchdowns in his career, 9-time Pro Bowler and a Hall of Famer. Charlie Joyner, 750 catches for 65 touchdowns, 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro. Charlie Joyner and Tim Brown are basically possession receivers, okay? Who can't, Charlie Joyner, for one thing, I remember the story told by Dan Fouts is that whenever they had rookies come into the Chargers training camp, they would put on film on certain routes that was run. Every one of those routes that were shown on film were routes run by Charlie Joyner because of his precise route running. And that was like the key for this team, I think, is the precise route running. Hines Ward, 1,000 catches in his career. 4-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl 40 most valuable player, 2-time Super Bowl champion. You said it yourself, one of the most outstanding blocking receivers that there ever was, even though for his slight frame, he was a very physical receiver. And to round it out, Marvin Harrison, if there was a clutch receiver, every time the Colts needed something from Peyton Manning in late stages of the game, they always went to 88. They always went to Marvin Harrison. And to echo your point about the lack of depth of receiver in the AFC during that time, that is sheerly evident in this. But as far as like the NFC, because I thought about this, I have no idea who you got. I know 2 for sure, that I would pick out of the NFC for sure. But there's so many other ways that you can go beyond the first 2. So who did you have?
One final thing about Charlie Joyner, no problem with that. And as I told you at the beginning of the episode, I'm going to give deference to guys that made it happen when the defense could play unimpeded, and uninhibited. And he used to go across the middle. You remember, he used to have that kicker face mask, that one little bar, and he was still going across the middle, go and get it. So you have no problem, no qualm from me about Charlie Joyner. Shout out Grambling State. But anyway, my receivers, man, this was kind of after my first 2. No, I would say after my first 3, it was kind of difficult.
Okay.
Now, to your point, as I mentioned, a continuing theme, we're playing today. We got the win. My life is on the line. Yep. That's what I'm basing it on. Now, some people may have better abilities. Others may have even better numbers. Some may even have foot. But when it comes to having to win one game, these are the guys I got. Now these are some of the guys that I had for very, very strong consideration. Now, once again, I mostly leaned to the old school because like a lot of times these guys are like, well, these new receivers now, this, that, and other, and it's like, okay, like for example, somebody like Marvin Harrison, right?
Yeah.
If he played now 17 games, the man was catching 120 back then. The man, the dude would probably catch like 165 and have like 2,100 yards a season or something like that, because the defense has to play so inhibited now that it's easy. So I always gave deference to, because once again, is there a question that some of these guys that we were talking about could come in today and be productive? Absolutely not. They would definitely be productive. Whereas if you ask some of the guys that's running around today making plays, could they go back into that previous era and make plays where that safety could really, that safety could really lower the boom on you? We're not so sure about that. But anyway, I had the following people under very strong consideration. I had Randy Moss, Sterling Sharp, and Chris Carter under very strong consideration. And I decided Chris Carter, as great as he was, just not good enough. Shannon Sharp, he's good enough to be a starter. Not Shannon, Sterling. Sterling Sharp, good enough, but that longevity piece, he, even though I'm so happy he finally got into the Hall, but that longevity. And then Randy Moss, as great as he was, kind of similar to Barry Sanders, always shrank. The bigger the game, he gets small all of a sudden. 1998, lost to Chris Chandler and Jamal Anderson at home. That you're being guarded by what's the boy name?
Eugene Robinson.
No. It was Eddie Robinson. No, that was the safety that went out the night before the Super Bowl. No, what's his name? Ray Buchanan. Man, come on, bro. You got Ray Buchanan, who was a good player. Yeah. But you got to make that happen. Then he came right back, and in 2000, you got an NFC Championship game against the Giants, which you lost 41-0 at the Meadowlands. You got locked up by Jason Sehorn, man. Come on, man.
Yeah.
You got locked up by Jason Sehorn.
I really thought Randy Moss was on your team. I really thought that, because remember I said I think that you had of your receivers. I think I know 3 of them. Randy Moss was one of them. And I was like, I'm shocked by that. So I'm really curious on who you have.
And then on top of that, with Randy, all he can do, especially against the players you're going to try out, all he can do, he was a one-trick pony. Now, hell of a trick it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hell of a trick it was. He's going to run that 9 route and then hope for the best. You know what I mean? Whereas, like a lot of times in games like this, which in big games as well as championship games, you understand this. A lot of times it's a series of solid routine plays that must be executed to tilt the balance in terms of whether you win or lose, as opposed to 1 or 2 spectacular plays. So he's not a great runner. I didn't even consider Calvin Johnson either. I didn't consider him either for the same reason. They kind of shrink. So obviously my first two receivers, Jerry Rice, the incomparable Jerry Rice. Yes. You know what I mean? Just, arguably, without question, the greatest receiver of all time, and arguably the greatest offensive player of all time, arguably. Just no need to even run the numbers, man. 3 Super Bowls. The man got over 22,000 yards. The brother got like 200 touchdowns or something like that. The man caught for like 1,200 yards at like age 40 or something, which is just, which is ridiculous. The man got 1,549 receptions, 22,895 receiving yards. The brother got 197 touchdowns. Check this out. The man caught at age 41 in Oakland. The man caught for, let's see what he do. The brother caught for 869 yards at age 41. He caught for 1,211 at age 40. And even his final season in Seattle, age 42. Oh, he's totally washed up, right? The man caught for nearly 450 yards in his final season at age 42. Nowadays, 450 yards in the season, that gets you a 2 to 3 year contract for like $6 million per now.
Yeah, exactly.
So Greatest receiver of all time. My next guy, don't give a damn what anyone says, team obliterator, team whatever, and all of this, but he's going to give you everything he's got, and he's going to make the plays every single time. No other than T.O., Terrell Owens, baby. He's my number 2. You know, I mean, who can make a play? I can. You know, he should have been first ballot Hall of Famer, but they messed over the dude. Hall of Fame, all 2000s teams, 6 Pro Bowls, 5 times All Pro. Now look at these numbers: 167 games, 15,934 yards, 1,078 receptions, 153 touchdowns, man. That is getting it done. That is getting it done, man. You know, and he's still, let me see, his last season in the league at age 37 with the Bengals, he caught for 983 yards in his final season. Now, he had some issues with drops here and there, but the man could make the plays. He always played big in big games, and who can forget that big-time game in the Super Bowl against the Patriots when he played with the bone fracture in his lower extremity and all that. And he would have been the MVP of the Super Bowl had Donovan McNabb been able to get it done.
Well, let me tell you this. I mean, Jerry Rice, you can't argue with that. You can't, okay? If you took everything about T.O., and you just watch him just in a vacuum and just not consider what he did off the field or what kind of a person he was, you know, during his career. I think that he's done a lot to kind of try to rehabilitate his image post-career. But if you look at him just football-wise, he was probably the best receiver in the NFL in the early 2000s.
Question, and I've always felt that he was a better receiver than Rice for the following reason. I mean, not Rice. I'm sorry. No, than
Randy Moss.
Like, he could make all of the big plays over the top that Moss could make.
Yeah,
comparably, but where he really separated himself from Moss consistently was the following. He could, 3rd and 5, deep in your own territory from the 15, he could take that 3-yard ball and tack another 80 onto it.
Yep.
6. And that was something Moss, despite his speed and all, he didn't do consistently because all he ran was the dime routes. He could, he and T.O. and Rice were both masters of the yards after catch, which in turn makes a job so much easier for an offensive coordinator and a quarterback because you can get explosive plays out of very safe and high percentage calls, and you can still get an explosive play out of it. So I have T.O. as my number 2. Now, my last two receivers. Number 3 to me was a no-brainer. I don't give a damn what anyone says. You know what I mean? It's a number. Now, caveat, for what we were doing, the Seahawks are considered an NFC team.
Yeah.
What we're doing.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, Steve Largent.
Of course. Of course.
To me, no-brainer to me. You know what I mean? To me, because like Rice and all of that, Rice could really, despite his explosiveness, do all of those interior routes, keep the chains moving, find the spot in the zone and all of that. But Steve Largent, he was the absolute master at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was the absolute master at finding the void in the zone, beating single coverage, converting, Mr. Third Down, man. He was the master at doing that. Hall of Fame. Unbelievably, one-time All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler, all 80s team, and all of that. And despite you thinking that, okay, he's a possession move the chains guy, he averaged 16 yards a catch for his entire career. And he used to do this all with nothing but some minimal tape on his fingers, bare hands. Yeah. He didn't have the old wide receiver glove and all of that. Like to me, Steve Largent is a no-brainer, one of the greatest receivers that ever lived. And then My fourth receiver, kind of similar to Emmett, where it's a lot of guys that had better accolades in terms of individual stats than him, and probably was a bit more explosive and so forth. But if it's a game I have to win, and my life depends on it, I want this guy in my huddle, and that's none other than the playmaker, Micah Irvin. I got to have him for a game, for a must-win game.
Yeah. Okay.
And you would agree. Okay. Randy Moss is, talent-wise, he's far better.
Yeah.
But if it's a game that you must win, I think you would be a lot more at ease if it came down to these two. You'd rather have Irvin if your life depended on it.
Okay.
Because you know he's going to give it everything he's got, and he's going to play big. The bigger the game, the bigger he plays, and he's going to come with the right intensity. And the same thing with him. You need him to block, he can block. You need him to get physical and he see that safety coming down there. He, like Steve Atwater or someone, he doesn't care. He's going to he's going to get hit hard, but he's going to make that catch nonetheless. He doesn't care. He's going to make that play.
All right. Okay. So all 4 of your picks at wide receiver, I have no problem with. The question that I have is, and I just have this one simple question. Was Larry Fitzgerald a consideration? No?
Absolutely not. No.
Why?
All of these guys are better. They're better than him. At his peak, every last one of these guys are better than him to me. As great as he was, and once again, now he played some of his career before they vastly changed the rules. But once again, I gave more priority, more deference to the guys that did it in the era in which there were no restrictions and things like that. I gave deference to those guys. Okay. And then Larry Fitzgerald, he was never a guy. Now, he used to make some spectacular jump ball catches and things like that. But as spectacular as that was kind of concerning, because people be like, well, you know, Rice, he didn't make as many jump ball catches. Hell, the man was open by 10 yards. That's why. You know what I mean? He was so damn open, you know.
He didn't have to.
Whereas, like, a lot of times, Larry Fitzgerald, and part of it is because the limited weapons that they had around him, they knew he was the guy. But he always had to make contested catches, and he wasn't as good of a. He could give you some yak, but not as good as Rice nor Owens to me. Well, and then I just think Irvin and Largent, everybody, even the guys I consider Moss, Sterling, and Chris Carter, I just think they're all just they were better players than he was.
Well, I'm gonna say this. This is the only pushback that I have for Larry Fitzgerald is the fact that the Cardinals are not in the Super Bowl without him. They're not. They're not in the Super Bowl without him. The Super Bowl isn't even a close game without him. Okay. Now the only argument against that I would make is the fact that his career, as long as it was, there's not a lot of great moments or memorable moments from him outside of what happened the year they went to the Super Bowl. You know, but he was just such of a great player. And, you know, the only pushback that I have of you know, again, I can't argue with that. Of your 4 picks, Rice, Largent, T.O., Michael Irvin, I can't go wrong. Look, I can't argue with that. But I was just wondering, was Larry Fitzgerald under consideration? Calvin Johnson, I understand he wasn't under. I understand that. Not picking Calvin Johnson, Chris Carter, you know, but Chris Carter's career wasn't really amount to much, and wasn't really much until he went to Minnesota, you know, and teamed up with Rice. You know, so I get that. I got it. You know,
another thing with Fitzgerald, if I may add.
Go ahead.
The 2009 divisional bounty game against the Saints, when the Saints were sticking, man. Now about the Saints, everybody, they've been getting pushed around for 40 years, and when they finally decided they'd had enough, now the whole league mad. But I'm being biased. So, but anyway, the way the Saints was hitting that day. Larry Fitzgerald kind of ducked behind the curtain. You remember in Godfather 1 when Santino got to the toll booth and
Yeah.
the toll booth knew the hit was coming and the toll booth operator just ducked up underneath the thing.
Yep.
That's kind of what Larry Fitzgerald did that day. He kind of ducked underneath the countertop to evade the incoming fire. So,
Right.
I can't have that on my team, man.
Okay. Now, my tight ends. Okay. And again, you said it. I had so many tight ends to choose from. Everybody from Shannon Sharp to just Gronk, Tony Gonzalez, Mickey Schuler of the Jets, who was an underrated tight end during his time in the early 80s. But you could accuse me of being a homer. I don't care. But you have two of the greatest tight ends who actually changed the position of tight end. My only thing that I had a problem with was who was going to start. Okay, so my starting tight end is Antonio Gates. 955 receptions, 11,841 receiving yards, 116 touchdowns, 8-time Pro Bowl, 3-time All-Pro, all 2,000 starting tight end. I had to go with Antonio Gates as my starter. And, of course, my backup, the man who changed the position of tight end, none other than Kellen Winslow Sr. Hall of Famer, 541 receptions, 6,700 yards receiving, 45 touchdowns, 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, and all 1980s team. So those are my tight ends. 2 Chargers, sue me. Okay, yes, I'm a homer. I chose 2 Chargers to be my tight ends.
No issue with that whatsoever. None. Because, you got to think about it. Okay, you had some others under consideration. You had Gonzalez, Gronk,
Shannon Sharp.
Shannon. I think Shannon should, because I think he revitalized it too. But I can understand that other than Shannon Sharp, both Gates and Winslow are more explosive than all of the rest of them. You know what I mean? They all of the rest of them. Now, the only pushback that I would have in terms of that in a game like this, and especially with my defensive front seven, you would probably need a bit more blocking capability from that.
When you see my offensive line, you may have to change your mind. But go ahead.
Really, I don't have any problem with that because, as you mentioned before, Winslow, he was the original benchmark and the prototype for the new tight end, and then Shannon came in and took that to the next level. But basically, kind of like, Winslow was kind of the James Brown of this thing, and Shannon was kind of the Michael Jackson of this thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, kind of. You know what I mean?
There you go.
You can't argue with Gates, and I've always felt that as good as Gonzalez was, he wasn't as explosive as those other players, and nor Shannon Sharp. So no qualms from me whatsoever with either of those picks.
Now I was talking with my sister, who is a big football fan, and she asked why, and I know that some people may be asking this question, why wasn't Travis Kelce considered? No. No, the reason why Travis Kelce gets so wide open is the fact that defenses have a tendency to forget about him, which I don't understand why. And he's not explosive at all.
No.
And he fits that offense so well that he doesn't need to be explosive. My tight ends have to be explosive, and you brought up the fact about their Antonio Gates is a 1,000% better blocker than Kellen Winslow ever was. In fact, when Kellen Winslow came out of Missouri, they used to call Kellen Winslow the San Diego Chicken because he was afraid of contact. But as time went on, he became a better blocker, but that wasn't his game. His game was to line up at tight end, and then Coryell would send him in motion automatically, making mismatches all over the place. Because of that new wrinkle of splitting the tight end out, which teams had never done before in the 1970s and early 80s, and now it's a common thing, and he was one of the reasons why he's considered the the prototype modern tight end, and then with Gates being an ex-basketball player, which, he was at Kent State, he was just, all Rivers had to do was just throw it up in the back of the end zone, and he would just box somebody out in the back of the end line, and he'll catch it for a touchdown. That's how he got so many touchdowns, So those are my two tight ends, two Chargers, Kellen Winslow, and my starter, Antonio Gates.
Kelsey, just in case any of our viewers are kind of skeptical of the picks, question would be, okay, if you had Donnie Shell, Jack Tatum, Dennis Smith, Steve Atwater raining down in the middle, would Kelsey be as effective?
No.
I would say probably not.
No, because Donnie Shell, because guys,
David Fulcher with the Bengals,
they would have knocked his head off. He wouldn't have been able to get off the line. He wouldn't have been able to get off the line. Who was your tight end? So you made a comment earlier about how hard it was to find tight ends in the NFC, and just I'm trying to rack my brain on who would be. I got one, maybe two tight ends that I would select, and neither one of those, they're decent, but they're not to your level of what you would consider as far as like whoever loses the game loses their head. So who is your tight ends?
Dude, when it came to this, honestly, for the purposes of winning, I would rather have selected a tackle eligible here.
Wow.
Because, basically I picked two people, and they're great players, but I'm not crazy about neither of them, because one of them was the epitome of consistency, but he did it a lot under these rules. He wasn't particularly explosive nor anything like that, but he got it done. I'm not crazy about him. The other guy was ridiculously explosive, but his peak in his prime was very short due to injury, and even during his prime, he was an incomplete tight end as far as all around. Tremendous receiving tight end, very explosive, but incomplete. So, number one, the steady Eddie guy, Jason Witten. Good 11-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, 13,000 yards receiving, 1,228 receptions, 74 touchdowns. But to indicate, and he's did damn good to be a third-round pick too. So I give him kudos for that. But to bestow my point, 10.6 yards per reception. So it's like you're not going to. Like going into the game, if he's my starting tight end, you're not going to be worried to death of like, okay, well, how am I going to take away Jason Witten? You're not going to concern yourself with that very much. He was to me, he was a very good player. He wasn't a great player. And I guess due to the longevity and the numbers, you have, it's just like baseball now where you have a lot of guys hitting 500 homers, and where that used to be an automatic threshold for Hall of Fame induction. As in recent years, a lot of guys that hit 500 homers, even though they got the numbers, they're not that good. You know what I mean? Same here. He was just, was it ever a point in his career where he was like, he was the best tight end in the league? No. He was just, as we would say, he was all right. He was all right. He was just good. He was solid for a long time. So that's him. My second one, since I strongly considered like Brent Jones, but then he didn't have the longevity nor the numbers. Okay. So I had to go unconventional. And you're probably going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? Jimmy Graham, New Orleans Saints, man. His peak was outstanding. But as I said before, his peak didn't last long, because once he left the Saints, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, but just even though, he played a long time, and after that, what did he have? He had a patella injury when he got traded to the Seahawks, and he was never really the same. Dude had 8,545 yards and 89 touchdowns compared to, I think Witten had like 70.
Yeah.
And he played like maybe a third more less games than Witten, but his peak was so short that but I had to pick somebody, man. So
Right.
I didn't, since I had a hard time coming up with those two. Hell, I didn't even have anybody for consideration.
Well, I had Witten as what I thought that you would pick. I thought you were going to pick Brent Jones. But I also thought of, and here's one, if I did the NFC, he would be my starting tight end. And there's nobody that you've even mentioned. I think, and it's a shame because he kind of been forgotten about, but he was what a tight end should look like. And I'm talking about none other than Mark Bavaro of the Giants. That's who I was talking about. Huh?
Yeah. That's what I said. I thought about Bavaro, but he was, out of all of them, and to your point, and I can concede this point, he's by far the most complete tight end.
Yeah.
Out of all of these guys, not even close. But then you remember he played in a run dominant era, which in of itself isn't a problem. But then you remember he was around the time of that 86 Super Bowl. He was really, really explosive, a great blocker, a matchup nightmare for safeties and corners.
Right.
And then linebackers way too fast. But then he had that knee injury, and he was still good after that. But he was no longer.
But he lost his explosiveness after that knee injury.
Yeah, he wasn't as transcendent. He was very good because he was so complete, but he wasn't transcendent. And I'll openly admit to you that you're probably right. He should be my star, because I did consider him, but his dominance was so short, and then he was solid for a lot of years. But I'll admit that he probably should be starting tight end, Mark Bavaro. Yes.
Okay. Now, moving on to my offensive line. Okay. Now, the way we did the offensive line, one player per position. One left tackle, one left tackle, one left guard, center, one right guard, one right tackle. Okay. Simple, right? Looking at my AFC starting offensive line, oh my God. This was very, very difficult. Okay.
Difficult for you, yes.
This was very difficult, but I got what I consider the best of the best. Okay. Left tackle, my blindside tackle, none other than Anthony Munoz.
One of the greatest of all time at that position.
Left guard, Bruce Matthews of the Oilers. Center, Dwight Stevenson of the Dolphins. Right guard, John Hanna of the Patriots. And right tackle, Jonathan Ogden of the Ravens. That's my offensive line. Once again, Munoz, Bruce Matthews, Dwight Stevenson, John Hanna, and Jonathan Ogden.
I don't have any qualms with any of those, because he's Anthony Munoz is probably the greatest left tackle that's ever lived. And then you got Dwight Stevenson. I don't know. He was very good. I figured you would have either gone Mike Webster, even though his heyday was in the 70s, or you would have gone with another Steeler center and
Damani Dawson. That's where it got kind of, once I got past Munoz, Bruce Matthews, and Hanna, the other two between Ogden and Stevenson, I was about to go with Damani Dawson. Mike Webster, I did consider that because Mike Webster played up until the 90s, with Kansas City. Jonathan Ogden at tackle, I thought about him. Couple other people that I had in another notebook that I just can't remember right off top, but that's my offensive line. Anthony Munoz. Between my offensive linemen, Munoz, Matthews, Stevenson, Hanna, and Ogden, they total 50 Pro Bowl selections.
You also have to consider the dog, probably the greatest overall lineman of all time, Bruce Matthews.
Yeah.
He's the only guy to make Pro Bowl at all three offensive line positions as a center, guard and tackle.
Yep.
I mean, just Bruce Matthews, and his brother Clay wasn't a slouch neither. They used to play outside linebacker with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't have any qualms with any of those guys because Ogden, man, come on. And like come on, man. Like, and I mean, you got him, Matthews, and you got Dwight Stevenson that, he kind of made the calls and kind of kept things in check for Dan Marino and the Mark brothers down in Miami. And then you had who else you had? Who else?
John Hanna.
John Hanna. We talked about him a couple weeks back for the New England Patriots. So great guy. So okay. That isn't bad, but my O-line, okay. My O-line, all right. My two offensive tackles, Willie Rofe and Jackie Slater. Those are mine.
Not bad. Not bad. I mean, those two.
And then offensive guard, one is going to be obvious. Another is a guy that I feel has been totally forgotten about, but was a bad dude.
Okay.
First in being Larry Allen.
Of course. Of course.
Name speaks for itself. Then the next guy that everybody forgets about, but was every bit as dominant, perhaps, Randall McDaniel, Minnesota Vikings.
I didn't. Randall McDaniel was a beast. He was a beast.
I mean, 12-time Pro Bowl, 7 times All-Pro, all 90s team, Hall of Fame. But when you talk about these guys, no one talks about him anymore. And he was just a dominant dude. And just imagine what those practices between he and John Randall were like, man.
Man.
Imagine what that was like, man. And
wow.
I had a couple guys for consideration, but I quickly dismissed them. Ironically, a pair of Hogs and Joe Jacoby and Russ Grimm.
I was about to ask you about that. I'm surprised that you didn't include them.
Yeah, Joe Jacoby and Russ Grimm. But when I really, I think the longevity of, the level of Rofe speaks for itself. I think that's a no-brainer. And then the longevity of Slater was there with that too. Then, Larry Allen on one end, perhaps the most dominant offensive guard of all time. And then I think it came down to Grimm and McDaniel. And I think as great as Grimm was, McDaniel,
Yeah.
McDaniel. And then my center, kind of similar situation to tight end. But this guy was a very good player, though.
Okay.
Jay Hilgenberg, Chicago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jay Hilgenberg. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good player. Very good player. Kind of with all of those robust personalities on the Bears.
Yeah.
He kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit due to
because he kept it all together. That's the reason why I think that he and my pick, Dwight Stevenson, are pretty much very similar guys. Everybody knows Munoz, everybody knows Matthews, everybody knows John Hanna, everybody knows Jonathan Ogden. But you needed a center in there that can keep it all together. Jay Hilgenberg on your side, having to keep everybody like the Jackie Slaters and the Randall McDaniels and those guys in check. That's what you kind of need at center. And I can't. That's a very, very impressive group of 5 along the offensive line. I have no qualms with that, bro.
Yes, sir. And you got to think. And then also a key thing, despite their accolades, a key common thread with these guys are 2 things: technical, the TNT, technical and toughness. Technical and toughness, man.
Yep.
You're not going to beat them due to a breakdown in technique.
Right.
And they're going to also be very hard to overcome in terms of toughness. But guess what? The exact same thing can be said about your group, too.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about our defenses, special teams, and our coaches on this Pro Bowl selection show. And we'll be right back right after this quick break. You're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here on the Sports History Network. And we're back here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, the podcast that gives you the best of sports from back in the day. Dana, Augusta, and Charles Combs, and we're currently talking about our selections of our Historically Speaking Sports Pro Bowl, all-time Pro Bowl selection show. Chuck is doing the NFC. I'm doing the AFC. You just heard us talk about our offensive players on our squads. Now we're going to turn over to defense. And to kick things off on defense, I want to make this admission. On my defensive squad, I actually have two players that are currently active in the NFL right now. Believe it or not, I have two players that are currently active that are still playing in the league right now that's on my defense. So,
I know one for sure.
Okay, so keep that in mind and just let me know if that's the one you think it is. Okay, we're going to start with the defensive line, okay? And starting off with my defensive ends, okay? 4 defensive ends, okay? My 4 defensive ends are Bruce Smith, 11-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 8-time All-Pro, and finished with an NFL record 200 sacks, okay? My other defensive end from the Indianapolis Colts, Dwight Freeney, 7-time Pro Bowl, 3-time All-Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champion, and 125.5 sacks. My other defensive, now those two are my starters. Now, my other two defensive ends, one of 2 players that are currently active in the NFL, Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns, 7-time Pro Bowler, 23 sacks this year, 5-time All-Pro, and 125.5 sacks on his career so far. And the other defensive end from the Miami Dolphins, Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, 2007 Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner, and 139 career sacks. So those are my defensive ends: Bruce Smith, Dwight Freeney, Myles Garrett, and Jason Taylor.
Garrett, no brainers to me. Freeney, especially the type of ball game this is going to be. You know, very, very effective if you can get me in 3rd and long.
Yeah.
Chances of getting me in 3rd and long, though, are if you can't manage to get me in 3rd and long, he might become an impediment to, because, you know, he wasn't as strong in the trenches against that run game, especially the power run game. He wasn't quite as strong.
But you got to remember, we got linebackers now. We got linebackers and a couple of Bruce Smith, Dwight Freeney, Myles Garrett, and Jason Taylor.
Jason Taylor, okay. He's a good player. He's very good. Hall of Famer. Okay. Yeah. Quite formidable. Who you had? Did you find that you had a difficult time coming with your 4, or did you have to whittle it down? And if so, who else did you have on the radar?
Those are the ones that I pretty much came up with in my mind was kind of no-brainers. I did consider Howie Long. I did consider him. That's pretty much. I did consider Cornelius Bennett. I did consider those two for sure. I also considered Greg Lloyd. But I went with those four because I think that along the defensive line, I need athleticism. With the type of linebackers that I have, I need athleticism on the side, on along the line, and especially with my two defensive tackles. Because my two defensive tackles one is supremely athletic, and another one is just straight bull rush.
And Howie Long isn't one of them, right?
No.
Damn, that's surprising, but yeah, okay. Let me think about that a little bit more then, because
But those are my defensive. Those are my defensive ends. Who were your defensive ends?
Okay, my defensive ends. One of them is a no-brainer, obviously. Middle field defense, Reggie White.
Reggie White, yeah.
That's just just no-brainer. It stands for itself. You know what I mean? Just all-time great defensive end, perhaps the greatest defensive end of all time, because I'll say the only in the conversation with Deacon Jones.
Yeah.
For me, 198 sacks. Look, the man played 232 games and had 198 sacks. I mean, he's closing in on a sack a game almost, man.
Yeah.
Which is insane. First ballot Hall of Famer, 13-time Pro Bowl, 8-time All-Pro, made 2 Super Bowls, won 1. He was the defensive MVP in that game. All 80s team, all 90s team, 2-time AP Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time UPI Defensive Player of the Year. Just, can't say anything else about him. And then also transformed an entire culture because prior to his arrival in Green Bay, man, nobody was going up there. He put the Green Bay Packers back on the map because, they weren't, back then, kind of similarly to Utah Jazz in basketball, players, especially African-American players, due to the climate as well as Wisconsin, man, who wants to go live in Wisconsin, man? Ooh,
right.
But he changed all of that around, and they kind of rode the success of what he helped between Holmgren and Favre, obviously, and all of those great players they had. They've kind of been prominent ever since,
Right.
They had a down period from the between the 60s through the 90s, pretty much.
Yeah.
So then my next starter may surprise a lot of people, right? Jack Youngblood.
That's not a surprise to me at all. Not a surprise to me at all.
You know what I mean? When I started, you know what it is? Like, obviously, I know him, and I knew he was a great player. I knew he was a Hall of Fame player, but he's most notably known for playing in the Super Bowl with a broken leg. That 1980 Super Bowl, we had a 79-80 season against the Pittsburgh Steelers when they won the final of their 4 in the Chuck Noll era, Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
But, man, when you start looking at the numbers, man, it was like, Hall of Fame, 7-time All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowl, 5-time All-Pro, all 70s team, Hall of Fame, 1975 Player of the Year. But then you start looking at, okay, he started in 1971, and his last year was 1984. He had 151 sacks, which is absurd because in this time frame, 20 passes a game, maybe?
Right.
Maybe.
And then we're talking in the NFC during the late 70s and early 80s where nobody was throwing the ball, at all. And the thing about Youngblood is the fact that, he did play with a broken leg and stuff in the Super Bowl. But if you think about the Los Angeles Rams defense, outside of Youngblood, Pat Thomas, and Nolan Cromwell, who else was there?
Wasn't a lot. wasn't a lot, man. And I'm just looking at this 151 sacks.
Sacks, right.
In that era where, man, like I said, if you threw the ball 20 times, that was a lot.
Yeah.
And so he didn't have, like a lot of these guys now, like you even look at someone like with the New Orleans Saints, Cam Jordan, he had something like 130 some sacks. And although he's been great, they throw the ball, what would you think? 35 attempts now is low.
Yeah. 35 attempts is average because when Drew Brees won the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 44, he had 35 attempts. Right. And that was low for a Super Bowl. Even then, it's hella low now. That's
what I'm saying. So think about what he was able to do in much fewer opportunities. So Jack Youngblood was there. Okay, that was pretty much no brainer for me. Julius Peppers is my third.
Yeah,
no brainer for me.
Absolutely.
Just tremendous player, gave me hell for years and years, right? But, by comparison, right? Whole career, 159.5 sacks.
Yeah, yeah.
And just way more. And then put a bow on Jack Youngblood. Final 2 seasons he played, he had 10.5 sacks. The second to last year. Then his last year, he had 9.5 sacks and say, man, I don't got it no more. I quit. 9.5 sacks.
Yeah. 9.5. You have 9.5 sacks now. You talking to your agent trying to get a contract extension.
Yes, $100 million, easy.
Yeah, exactly.
And Julius Peppers, great player on all those Carolina teams, a very, very disruptive defensive end and a complete defensive end. I mean, he was just as stout in setting the edge on the run game as he was causing havoc on passing downs in the pass game. First ballot Hall of Fame, a 9-time All-Pro, 3 times All-Pro. I mean, all decade 2000s, all decade 2010s, player of the year, defensive player of the year 2002. Then kind of left Carolina and they seemed like he was going to be on the downward side, and then sort of reinvigorated himself with the Bears, and then even the Green Bay, and then he came back to Carolina. Second to last year, age 37, man had 11 sacks at age 37. So enough said. Then my last one, it came down to, it was either Richard Dent or Michael Strahan.
Oh,
I went with Richard Dent because I just think Richard Dent, to me, honestly, Richard Dent was the better player, even though they were very, very similar. And then, Strahan, even though he pulled off one of the biggest Super Bowl upsets of all time, knocking off the undefeated Patriots, he and the OC
Umenyiora and that
Jason
group.
Tuck and that group, they played a tremendous game. But I gave a slight edge to Richard Dent, who obviously was MVP, as we mentioned in the Patriot episode, because they were the Patriots' opponent in that game. He was MVP of Super Bowl 20, and he had a long, productive career with first the Niners, and then got another Super Bowl in the tail end with the 94 San Francisco 49ers. And he had 137.5 sacks in 15 years, which is very good because a lot of that era, he didn't have a ton of opportunities to pass rush either.
Okay. Now, moving on to my defensive tackle to round out my defensive line. Once again, I do have a current player that's on my defensive line, and that is Chris Jones of the Chiefs. 3-time Super Bowl champ, 7-time Pro Bowl, and 3-time All-Pro, Chris Jones, which is my athletic speed rusher from the inside. My bull rusher from the inside, one of my all-time favorite players, even though he did not play for the Chargers, but one of my all-time favorite players, the linchpin, the leader of the New York Sack Exchange, Joe Klecko. 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro.
2 great players, and I still remember Klecko. He used to play that inverted 3-point stance. He used to line up He's the lineup diagonal directly over the center, man.
Yep.
So he can really slice and get upfield in a hurry. I remember those guys. He and Mark Gastineau, man, and
Mark Gastineau, Abdul Salam, Marty Lyons, the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh, Marty Lyons, boy, that's a name I haven't heard in a very long time. But a very, very good player, and all of that. And then Chris Jones, he has a ton of and just as much as regular season dominance due to all of the long postseason runs that Andy Reid and the Chiefs have had, he's had a lot of dominance in the playoffs as well, which is when it counts the most. So, two outstanding picks, in my opinion, two outstanding picks,
All right.
So, for me, my two defensive ends might be one is a no-brainer. Aaron Donald.
Okay, yeah.
Said, no-brainer. Aaron Donald, he's just the man, even though I still don't like him from that 2018 NFC title game when they got gifted a Super Bowl berth, but no fault of his own. 111 sacks. Look at this. 24 forced fumbles.
Yeah.
That is getting it done. And the man, look at this. Just looking at it, he was all pro. He was all pro first team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He was all pro first team 9 times. And then the other year he wasn't Pro Bowl. He was also he wasn't all pro. He was also Pro Bowl. He made Pro Bowl all 10 years and then walked away at the age of 32 with definitely a couple of years left in him and all that. So Aaron Donald. And then my next pick is came down to two people. Came down to John Randall or Warren Sapp. That's what it came down to. I wound up taking John Randall because I just think he was a slightly better player than Warren Sapp was and all of that. I think he was, and as well as he was a bit more consistent now, he was a character, but he was a better player. I just took him over Sapp because I felt that he was much more better in the run game, which
he was.
Definitely against your front line, because you got to think about it. Okay, he for the discrepancy, right? He played 21 more games than Warren Sapp, right?
Yeah.
But he has 41 more sacks than Warren Sapp has.
Wow.
which is insane. You know what I mean? So he just, they both have 7 Pro Bowls. Sapp has the title. They both have 6 All-Pros. Sapp has a AP Defensive Player of the Year, whereas Randall doesn't. But for me, the pick is John Randall. And as I mentioned before, those battles between he and McDaniel I would have loved to have been in on those training camp practices when they went at each other in those practices.
But can you imagine John Randall going head up with somebody like Bruce Matthews or John Hanna?
Wouldn't be put faint at heart, I can tell you that much. You know what I mean? And I honestly don't know how that would go. I don't know.
Right. That's what makes this so fun. That's what makes this so much fun. Now, for those of you who are listening, we are running a 4-3 defense, which means that we have 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers. And now moving on to linebacker, and this one here, my starters was pretty much set from the jump. Okay, I can't go wrong with these 3. Now, my other 3, I had to pretty much, because I had a lot there, and I have one pick just because, I'm gonna do like a ceremonial pick. That's not part of this team, but I have to include him. I have to, okay? And oh, by the way, before I get too far upstream, you're going to be a very good favorite of my son because my son played defensive tackle when he was in high school, and his favorite player was Aaron Donald. So, and that's who we patterned his game after, was Aaron Donald. Anyway.
Yes, sir.
My starting linebackers, very simple. 3 no-brainers in my opinion. Ray Lewis, Junior Seau, and Derek Thomas.
Yeah.
Those are my starters. Ray Lewis, 2-time Super Bowl champion, MVP in Super Bowl 35, 12-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. Junior Seau, Hall of Famer, 12-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 1992 Defensive Player of the Year, part of the All-90s team. And, of course, rounding it out, the late, great Derek Thomas, Hall of Famer, 9-time Pro Bowler, All-90s team, 1993 Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, 1987 Rookie of the Year Award, 2-time All-Pro, and on November 11th, 1990, recorded an NFL record 7 sacks against the Seattle Seahawks. So those are my starters: Ray Lewis, Junior Seau, and Derek Thomas.
Can't go wrong with any of that. And as many great players if you've had at those respective positions, they still manage to a degree, revolutionize their respective positions and make their mark. Because, Derek Thomas, man, the fastest get off I've ever seen.
Yep, he did.
At the time, it looks like he's offsides half the time.
Yeah.
That's how fast his get off was. He just could time the snap so well, and he was just insane. Ray Lewis, enough said. You don't even need to. Enough said about that. And then, Junior Seau, just as dominant and was very, very versatile, could rush the passer, definitely could stuff the run, could cover backs and tight ends. And then he could really read and diagnose very quickly, do this immaculate film study. So 3 very good picks.
Okay, my 3 backup linebackers: Andre Tippett, Terrell Suggs, and James Harrison.
Damn, make a start.
Exactly.
That's no joke, man. And see, with them running around, you have to have sweetness and Emmett, because with that kind of hitting going on, man, Sanders and Peterson, they would definitely cough it up a time or two for sure. With that kind of hitting going on, tremendous players.
Andre Tippett, Hall of Famer, 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, 1985 Defensive Player of the Year. T. Sizzle, 7-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, 2003 Rookie of the Year, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 2011 Defensive Player of the Year, and James Harrison, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 100-yard interception return for a touchdown in Super Bowl 43, also a 2-time All-Pro.
Just bad dudes, man. Bad dudes. And that what was it? That 08 Steelers defense, that's probably the last intimidating because the Seahawks were good, but they weren't intimidating. That Steel Curtain, that 2008 defense with he and the safety, the long hair dude,
Troy Polamalu
and those guys, man. Ryan Clark, all of those. That was the last intimidating defense that they had before they changed the rules and all of that.
Right.
Just a great group and a great player.
But I think, as good as my linebacking core is, I think yours might be better. I don't even know who's on yours, but it usually seemed like you had a much more of a wide variety to choose from for your linebacking core.
I think so too. Now, before we slide over to me, were there an additional 2 to 3 names that you considered, or
I considered, honestly, I do want to add one. He's not going to play at all, but I just wanted to mention him. Okay. And that's Tom Jackson of the Broncos. People don't remember how good of a player. People remember him for doing on ESPN or whatever, but a lot of people do not realize how good of a player Tom Jackson really was. He played, his last game was in Super Bowl 22 with the Super Bowl 21 with the Broncos against the Giants. He got hurt midway through that game, but he was like the linchpin of the old Orange Crush defense. You know, he was instrumental in the Broncos' first ever postseason win, you know, but I just wanted to mention how great of a player Tom Jackson was. As far as like anybody else that was part of that I really thought about, not really. I came up with this group of 6 in about 30 seconds, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, 'cause I remember Tom Jackson was really good with Carl Mecklenburg and Rulon Jones. I remember those guys. You know what I mean? So yeah. Real good. My 3 linebackers for the starters are Lawrence Taylor.
Of course.
Greatest defensive player ever lived. Completely. The only other person that's even in the discussion would either be Reggie White or Dick Buckers. But I think he has since he revolutionized the outside linebacker position, I give him the edge. And, 10-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ. He won the MVP of the league overall as a defensive player in 1986.
Second player to ever do so.
Yep. 3-time AP Defensive Player of the Year. He was the Rookie of the Year. Just insane. 142 sacks in 184 games. And he just completely revolutionized the game. Like all of these guys that you talked about, like Andre Tippett, Derek Thomas and all of that. He's the grandfather of not Andre Tippett necessarily, but definitely Derek Thomas. He's the grandfather, like a lot of those guys, Greg Lloyd, Kevin Green, those guys, Khalil Mack, those guys. He's the grandfather of all of that. You know what I mean? So him, then my middle linebacker, no brainer once again, Mike Singletary.
Of course. Iron Mike.
Linebacker there. Once again, first ballot Hall of Fame, 10-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro, won Super Bowl 20 and 85 with the historic Bears defense, Hall of Fame all 1980s team, 2-time APA and UPI Defensive Player of the Year, and just insane, just insane. He had, let's see, they don't have the stats going back that far, but in his final season at 34 years of age in 1992, he made the Pro Bowl. So
there you go.
It's like enough said. And then my final one, I think this is a no-brainer, but when they talk about great linebackers, they don't always bring this guy up for some reason. But he's the quintessential perfect outside linebacker, and he's the prototype. None other than Derrick Brooks of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah,
Derrick Brooks.
I mean, that group there, is like LT, Mike Singletary, Derrick Brooks. On the NFC side, I don't think you can get any better than that. I mean, Derrick Brooks arguably should have been Super Bowl MVP when the Buccaneers beat the Raiders in that Super Bowl. Arguably, he should have been MVP. He had he had a pick six for a touchdown in the game. That when the Bucs just absolutely manhandled the Raiders. And then, of course, Lawrence Taylor and Mike Singletary, LT, greatest defensive player of all time. You got 2 players on your team, LT and Reggie White, that are considered 2 of the greatest defensive players of all time. So all I can say about that is, damn. And then you got Mike Singletary, who is the quintessential greatest middle linebacker and the greatest eyes you could ever see on a football field. I mean, you walk up to the line as a quarterback, and you look at the middle linebacker, and you have to identify where the Mike linebacker is, and he's looking at you with those eyes. I'm like, I don't know if I want any part of this. You know what I mean? So
Predator.
Exactly.
Just waiting to
Exactly.
pounce, man.
Exactly.
Waiting to
You know,
pounce.
so you got those three. I'm almost afraid to hear what you do to use the other three, especially with the stacked linebackers of the NFC during our lifetime.
Yep. Three are as follows. I got Sam Mills.
Of course.
Then I got some people may be skeptical of this one, but this is my team, so I pick who I want. We got Patrick Willis. You know, he was very, very good.
Very
Retired
underrated.
early.
Very underrated. Very underrated.
Very, very good, man. Made the Hall of Fame, probably quit. How many seasons did he play? He quit at age 29. So he played about, let me see, how many years did he play? Boom. He played 8 seasons and he got out, man. And he just a dominant player with those early 2010s with he and Navarro Bowman. And because, you know, they used to give my Saints hell. I still remember that 2011 divisional game, man.
Yeah.
They used to give us hell, man. And just 7-time Pro Bowler, 7-time Pro Bowl, 5-time All-Pro, all 2010 team, 2007 AP Defensive Rookie of the Year, just a great player. And then last but not least, I kind of went back and forth with this one, but I ultimately settled on Brian Urlacher.
Okay.
I ultimately settled on him because it came down to that final spot came down to he and Charles Haley. That's what I was looking at for that final spot. It was he and Charles Haley. But since I had plenty pass rush already, then I could use another field general, you know, as well, even though all of these guys had extremely high IQ. So I settled on him, you know, Hall of Fame, 8-time Pro Bowl, 4-time All-Pro, all 2000 team, Rookie of the Year 2005, 2000 Defensive Player of the Year, had a Super Bowl appearance in 2006 with the Bears versus the Indianapolis Colts. And then just to wrap it up, the other 2 players I had, one for reasonable contention, I briefly considered Ricky Jackson and London Fletcher. But
okay. What about Carl Banks of the Giants? Or Harry Carson?
I didn't consider Carl Banks, but I strongly considered Harry Carson.
Yeah.
I strongly considered Harry Carson, but because at first he was going to have that, but then I had him in Patrick Willis's spot because I had forgotten about Patrick Willis. But then when I thought about Patrick Willis, I was like, well, no, I can't. I didn't consider Carl Banks, but I definitely considered his teammate Harry Carson.
Okay. All right. Now moving on to corners. Okay. And with the AFC, you got a few guys on here that are considered really no-brainers, at least for me. One of my starting cornerbacks is none other than Rod Woodson, Hall of Famer of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 11-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champ with the Ravens, 1993 Defensive Player of the Year, and part of the All-90s team. That's one of my starting corners. The other cornerback gave my Chargers hell twice a year, none other than Champ Bailey, Hall of Famer of the Broncos, 12-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, all 2000s team. So my 2 starting corners, Rod Woodson and Champ Bailey.
Can't go wrong with either of those, man. Because, I remember the Blitzburg defense of the 90s under Bill Cowher, man, in the old Three Rivers Stadium.
Yep.
In the old Three Rivers Stadium, man, those games, man, with them and the Oilers, man, used to be like, man, them games with them and the Oilers used to be like, damn, So,
yeah, exactly.
And great player. Then, switched over to safety in his latter half of the career with the Niners, and then won the Super Bowl with the Ravens. And then early in his career as well, was a tremendous return man. And then underrated element of him as well was he was a very, very good tackler in his rookies, hence the ability to move to safety later in his career, which is what he played in college.
Yeah.
Ironically, he had never played corner until he got to the league because his 40 time was so high. They were like, no way, you got to go to corner, because he's so fast.
Yeah. So my 2 starters, Rod Wilson and Champ Bailey. My other 2 corners One of them, I think I have to. One of them I had to include because he's my dad's favorite player, and the other one, his career really didn't last long, but for a time, he was one of the most feared defensive backs and one of the best cover corners ever. I'm talking about.
right?
I'm talking about Darrelle Revis of the New York Jets, the landlord of Revis Island, 7-time Pro Bowl and 4-time All-Pro, and my dad's favorite player, none other than Mr. Stickum, Lester Hayes. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Lester Hayes of the Raiders, 5-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 1980s Defensive Player of the Year, all 1980s team. So my other two corners, Darrelle Revis and Lester Hayes.
Now, Darrelle Revis, yes. Lester Hayes, yes. Because it's like, okay, slight venting session. He's not in the Hall of Fame, and Rondé Barber is.
Right, exactly.
Like, I mean, it's like, okay, Rondé Barber, okay, fine. But you played cover 2, which was a zone scheme, zone concept. And obviously, we had Warren Sapp, Tony Dungy, John Lynch, Derek Brooks, and Simeon Rice.
Yeah.
Applying that pass rush, so your job wasn't that hard. And you remember the one year they switched over to the man scheme, he got torched the entire season.
Repeatedly, right.
So it's like, that's like saying somebody, a big man can be, in basketball, he can be a Hall of Famer, but he can't rebound. It's like,
right.
like how is he? But one drawback is, okay, and maybe because the 80s, he did the bulk of his work in the 70s, maybe.
No,
but
well, Lester Hayes, Mike Haynes, I really thought about. I really thought about. But I think I put Lester Hayes on there because I needed somebody that was something of a character as part of this, defense, because cornerbacks have big egos. Rod Woodson, not that big of an ego. Champ Bailey, very solid player, didn't talk much. Darrelle Revis, technically sound. I needed somebody that could basically come up to the line of scrimmage and talk smack with somebody, and had no problems backing it up. And that's what Lester Hayes was. Lester Hayes, I remember, I don't know what it was. I think it was a Nike commercial during the 80s. The commercial was that you was this receiver walking up to the line of scrimmage and he's in front of you and he just talking smack the whole time. And then as soon as you come off the ball, he knocking you in the face. And that's how the commercial ends. So
tremendous player.
And so that's why I picked Lester Hayes because, and then plus the stickum aspect of it. And plus, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying,
I think he gets unfairly characterized with that because, Fred Biletnikoff did the exact same thing, but he's praised for it.
Yeah.
Even has a college award named after him, which it should be, by the way.
Yeah.
It should be. But then, they try to act like Lester Hayes, all he was Stickum, and that's all it was. And that's not true. He was a great player because I still remember how the Skins had won the Super Bowl the year before, Super Bowl 17 in 82. They came back in 83 with the highest scoring offense of all time at the time, which wasn't broken until the aforementioned greatest show on turf Rams. And the Raiders came into that Super Bowl, and with Hayes' and Haynes' ability to lock Art Monk, Alvin Garrett, man-to-man, Charlie Brown, man-to-man, that freed up Matt Millen and Rod Martin to focus on the clogging the run lanes for John Riggins, and they totally dismantled the Redskins offense, which was a juggernaut.
Yep, exactly. So those are my corners: Rod Woodson, Champ Bailey, Darrelle Revis, and Lester Hayes.
Okay. Very good group. Very good group. Well, I think my starters are no-brainers, basically. Number one, primetime Deion Sanders, greatest cover man of all time. first ballot Hall of Famer, obviously, 8-time Pro Bowl, 6-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ, all 90s team, rookie of the year. And then in addition to that, man, he had, in addition to that, he was a threat in the return game as well. And to your point, you mentioned as far as Lester Hayes' character, he as far as character is concerned, he takes it and raises it up a couple of notches because, he invented his own alter ego. And then he was kind of a pioneer from the standpoint of making the cornerback position a glamorous position.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a pioneer of that. So obviously he's starting. Then my next man, another no-brainer in my opinion, none other than Darryl Green, Washington Redskins.
Of course. Oh, yeah.
No-brainer. Hall of Fame, 7-time Pro Bowl, 1-time All-Pro, 2 Super Bowls, all 90s team, just fastest man in the league for a billion years, could still run well into his 50s, was still running 4.4. And and I follow him on Instagram, and he still be training and he's just athletic marvel, and he just was a tremendous player. And then to all in the DC, 'cause I live in DC, everybody in the community, he's well known and consistently known as just an even better person and all of that. So he's another starter. And then my other two, I have two, and then I have an honorable mention that not really strong consideration, but just somebody I want to shout out that I feel don't get his just due. Number one, none other than our fellow alum, Aeneas Williams.
There you go.
Of the Arizona Cardinals, fellow Southern University alum. So for the longest time, he and Larry Sanders, they were the only thing that the Cardinals had. They had some god-awful teams in the late 80s and the majority of the 90s. Hall of Fame, 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, all 90s team. Once again, alumni of Southern University, Baton Rouge, which happens to be both of our alma maters as well. So shout out SU stand up. And then the final spot goes to Eric Allen, Philadelphia Eagles. You know
what? I forgot about Eric Allen. I totally forgot about him. But gee whiz, I thought that. But gee Monetti, was he good? Oh my gosh, I thought he was really good.
To Eric Allen. So I picked Eric Allen. Just the Philly defense, it just had an embarrassment of riches. He, Andre Waters, Wes Hopkins, Self Joyner, Clyde Simmons, Brown before he died. It was just, then you had everybody, to your point about commentary, everybody think Mike Golick from the old Mike and Mike show was just simply known for his broadcasting. But
no, he was a dog. He
wasn't nearly as glamorous, but he could plug that. He could play that nose guard, that defensive tackle, and clog that middle up and let all that supreme talent just roam free to wreak havoc. He was a very good player too, orchestrated by the architect, Buddy Ryan. Man, they were formidable. They were formidable defensive team. So those are my two starters, and then another guy for honorable mention, I didn't strongly consider him, just wanted to mention him. I feel that he should get Hall of Fame consideration, because if Rondé Barber can get in, it's like, man, come on. Everson Walls.
Oh my God, yes.
Everson Walls, Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants. Everson Walls, man, at cornerback, turnover machine, pick machine.
Yes.
And I just feel that through the years he's gotten lost in the shuffle, and it's like, he's a Hall of Fame player.
Yes, he is a Hall of Fame player, right? I think he's one of those guys that gets unfairly is unfairly blamed. Not blamed, but when you talk about the catch, and you talk about Dwight Clark, who's in the picture? It's Everson Walls, but you can't. I think that some players get unfairly praised for one play or one game, and others, their whole career gets wiped out because of one play or one game. Case in point, Everson Walls. Case in point, Jim Marshall, which is a crime that he's not in the Hall of Fame.
He's not in the Hall of Fame?
He's not. Jim Marshall is not in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, boy. Okay.
But Joe Namath is. Joe Namath is in the Hall of Fame because of one game. But if you look at Joe Namath's record, he only had 3 wins in his entire career against teams where at the time they played him had winning records. And one of them just happened to be the Super Bowl. But your corners, goodness gracious, those are some really solid corners. You know, Deion Sanders, not much on tackling, but he's one of the greatest cover corners ever. You know,
we got 10 other people, man. Let one of them tackle somebody. You know, but my thing was, to your point, briefly, I considered Champ Bailey for a split second because he did start with the Skins.
He started with the Redskins.
Once again, he's most notably known as a Bronco. So I, for the purposes of this, I quickly removed him from consideration because I think he went to the Hall as a Bronco too, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so I didn't even consider him. So
you know,
so yeah, okay.
Okay, so moving on to safeties. And this is the cornerstone of my defense, the safeties. If you could put them all in one category with one word, hitters. These guys could hit. Okay. My 2 starting safeties, of course you have to have both of these on my defense. That's starters. Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu. Those are my 2 starting safeties. Ed Reed, 9-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, 2004 Defensive Player of the Year, 64 interceptions. Troy Polamalu with the Steelers, 8-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champion, and 2000's all-time team with 32 interceptions. When I say we hitting. It's going to be all the way live, straight up. Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu are my starters.
About that, Ed Reed, in my opinion, and definitely in my lifetime, greatest safety I've ever seen. You know, and it's easy to me. You know, because he has the ability to, in addition to his hitting, just his IQ and intellect and the ability to prepare and take advantage of tendencies and all of that. And then he's like similar to when we were in the Patriot episode talking about how they played defense kind of offensively.
Yeah.
He does that as well. Like he plays very, very aggressively, but because of his ability to quickly diagnose keys, he doesn't necessarily gamble. He just knows what to do. And then once the ball is in his hands, he's a threat. He's a threat to get 6 every time. How many touchdowns did he wind up with?
I didn't get that. I forgot to write that down. But he has a lot. I was, it's like I meant to get this touchdown total, but it's a lot. Not only on interceptions, but off of it. He had a couple on field goal misses.
Correct.
And it's just amazing on all the things that he could do. Those are my 2 starters, Troy Polamalu and Ed Reed. My other 2 starters and my other 2 safeties who arguably could start if they, if those 2 were not there. And my other 2, Rodney Harrison and Steve Atwater. Rodney Harrison, 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 34 interceptions. Started with the Chargers, ended with the Patriots, won the Super Bowls, obviously with the Patriots. And Steve Atwater, 8-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time All-Pro, an all-90s team.
With any of that stuff, man, and they played at a time where, you had the bulk of your chin scrap if you went across there.
Yep.
And they did not let it go. I still famously remember late in the Super Bowl when AFC finally broke through the Elway dive game. Late that game, they were clinging to a lead. And they threw the ball he threw far through a ball in the seam to Robert Brooks, and Atwater closed, knocked out Brooks and his own teammate and himself. He didn't care. He just knocked out everything.
Yeah.
You know, and like you mentioned, y'all hitting over there, boy. You know, y'all hitting over there.
With my linebackers and my safeties, you better be aware coming across the middle. You better have your head on a swivel because you're gonna get knocked. Trust me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Any other considerations there?
No, those are the ones that I just came up right off the bat. Those four.
Okay.
Those four. You know, it's like I wanted my safety to be physical.
Yes, sir. And that's an understatement. You know, that's an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
So moving to mine, we hitting too.
I know that.
You know what I mean? Don't think you the only one that's gonna be hitting out here. We hitting too. You know, so my starting safeties, Ronnie Lott and Brian Dawkins. Those are my starting safeties.
Oh yeah, y'all hitting.
Ronnie Lott, first ballot Hall of Fame, obviously. 10-time Pro Bowl, 6-time All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champ. Hall of Fame, all decade 1980s and 1990s. 63 interceptions, 5 touchdowns, man. Just a bad dude. Then moving on to helped establish that Niner dynasty too. Then move over to Brian Dawkins, you know, Hall of Fame, 9-time Pro Bowl, 4-time All-Pro, you know, laying hat, 37 picks, 2 touchdowns, just a great player. All those years under Andy Reid and the Eagles, along with guys like Jeremiah Trotter and Jeremiah Trotter, folks like that, Donovan McNabb, Brian Westbrook, you know, those guys. They made several NFC title games in a row and all of that. Just a great player, and just play with a certain ferocity and high IQ as well. So those are my starters. Then I kind of I went back and forth on my backups, but I ultimately settled on 2 guys. Okay. First of which, since the Seahawks are considered an NFC team, even though he played the AFC, but for the sake of this exercise, they're NFC. None other than the enforcer himself, Kenny Easley, baby.
Yeah.
You know, that's Kenny Easley. 5-time Pro Bowler, Hall of Fame, 3 times All-Pro, All-80s team. You know, Defensive Player of the Year in 1984, 32 picks, 3 touchdowns. Just a great player. Like all of those just, and he played 7 seasons. So in 6 of the 7 seasons, he was Pro Bowl, and he just I still remember those battles when they used to go to the LA Coliseum and play the then Los Angeles Raiders, man. And then those battles with the Chargers and those battles, because they were in the AFC West in those days. Those battles with the Chargers and the Broncos, those used to be some, and the Chiefs too, but the Chiefs stunk in the 80s. So you know, some great battles, great player. He died within the past year, if I remember correctly. So rest in peace to him. And then my final pick, it is a very controversial pick. Very controversial. Okay. But the numbers don't lie. Tremendous player, sucky person, Darren Sharper. Darren Sharper. Tremendous player, sucky person. You know, helped bring the one and only Super Bowl my Saints have ever won. 5-time Pro Bowl, 2-time All-Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champ, Hall of Fame, all decade team for the 2000s. Just was a tremendous player, and kind of similar to Ed Reed, but to a much less degree, obviously, because there's only one Ed Reed. But I'm talking about his ability to ball hawk and turn that ball over, and then turn that into significant yardage or even points is unparalleled. And he really helped. He had in that Super Bowl winning year for the Saints in 2009. He had 9 interceptions for 376 return yards with three TDs, and he finished third in Defensive Player of the Year balloting that year. Tremendous football player, but the caveat, obviously, just as egregious of a person.
Right.
For obvious reasons, drugging women. And I remember when that first happened, a lot of people were like, well, he's a good-looking guy. He doesn't have to do that and all that, but that's not the point.
That ain't the point. Right.
I quickly retorted with, okay, we got 6 women in 4 different states all saying the same thing. Like, they're not lying, man.
No.
So they're not lying, but egregious person, but I picked them nonetheless. And other people I strongly considered Darren Woodson.
Yeah.
I strongly considered Charles Woodson. Now, for me, Charles Woodson has just always been kind of overrated to me.
I consider Charles Woodson, but I always felt like his best years was when he was with the Packers instead of him being with the Raiders. And even then, couldn't pick him considering that who I had for safeties already, and I couldn't do that. Now, I thought you were going to go with Darren Woodson. I really did. With the Cow. I really thought that you were going to go with Darren Woodson.
He was a very good player, but he wasn't a game-changing player to me.
Okay.
Like how similar to Sharper, Dawkins, Lott, Easley, how they could, he made good plays, but you don't remember like the pick sixes or the big interceptions at crucial times. Although he was very, very good. He was very, very good. And I think personally, he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Personally. And I think with Charles Woodson, he has the numbers, but if you watch him play, he got beat a lot, man.
Yeah.
A lot. Especially at corner. Because at age 27, 28, they're like, no, you got to move to safety. It's like, man, you can't. And it's kind of like that. He kind of had the longevity thing going a little bit. You know what I mean? So I left him off. And then a special honorable mention, my all-wood team. You know what I mean? One of my favorite players. I wanted to put him in that fourth spot, but it would have been just totally biased. Chuck Cecil, baby. Chuck Cecil, one of my favorite players, baby.
Yeah, when you said one of your favorite players, I'm like, yeah, that's Chuck Cecil. Here we come with Chuck Cecil.
Chuck Cecil would. And he didn't give a damn who he hit either.
He gonna hit somebody.
Just wood.
He's gonna hit somebody, whether it's his own player, the player he's supposed to hit, the referee. It don't matter. He hitting somebody.
Man, he was just like an uncaged lunatic almost. Man, he just obviously. He only played from 1988 to 1995 because he and Ryan Clark are both similar, where they just play with an utter disregard for their own safety.
Right. Exactly.
They play with an utter disregard for their own personal safety.
Now, one player that I did think about, and I was not sure what position he played, whether he was a corner or a safety. And that's Dave Durison for the Bears and Giants.
Safety.
Yeah, I thought that you were gonna go in his direction too.
I gave both he and his teammate, ironically, Gary Fensick, slight consideration, but
not necessarily Fensick. Necessarily Fensick, because Fensick could hit, but he wasn't really. Fensick was a great hitter. I mean, he could lay the wood on people, but as far as being like an actual cover type of safety, no. He was a liability in the passing game.
He was in to knock somebody out. That was it, Yeah. So, but Chuck Cecil is just honorable mention. I used to love Chuck Cecil and Brad Elwich with the Skins, and then another guy used to lay some wood with the Oilers. James What's his name? Donaldson. Jeff Donaldson.
Jeff Donaldson. Yeah.
Wood. Jeff Donaldson used to be laying wood too, man. You know. So and then like Donnie Shell and those types of guys, man. But those are my guys. And I know Sharper is controversial, but I was like, okay, he did help my Saints win the Super Bowl, even though he's a disgusting person. So I put on Sharper.
Right. So my special teams, and we're gonna go quickly to special teams. My punter, greatest punter of all time. Now, I did consider Reggie Roby of the Dolphins. I did consider him,
Ray Guy instead.
but I picked Ray Guy.
Okay.
Greatest punter of all time. My kicker, the greatest clutch kicker of all time, Adam Vinatieri, who played forever. And my kick returner, my return specialist, the human joystick himself, Dante Hall.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, mine goes as far for my kicker, another Saint. I strongly considered Mark Mosley just to have a straight on kicker. But
that would be so cool. That would be so cool.
Strongly considered Mark Mosley just to have a straight on kicker in the game. But I was like, against your defense, I may need a lengthy field goal. And pretty much Mark Mosley from 45. Anything beyond 45 is a problem. So I ultimately settled on Morton Anderson. And then for my punter, this may surprise you, but I know Ray Guy's the greatest punter you've ever seen, but this is the greatest guy I've ever seen at the coffin corner kick. The greatest. Okay. Jeff Fiegels.
Jeff Fiegels, yep.
He was the master.
Jeff Fiegels. Another one was Sean Landetta.
Yeah. The master,
but Jeff Fiegels was better. Yeah, Jeff Fiegels.
The master of the coffin corner punt. They don't even do that anymore. He was the master of the coffin corner, like pinning you inside the 5 and then just let that Eagles defense just wreak havoc. And then later he went from the Eagles to wasn't he with the Giants a while?
Yeah, it was the Giants. I think. Yeah, I knew he was with the Eagles.
Yeah,
he was with somebody else that I can't think of. Yeah, but when I hear Jeff Fiegels, I think of him in green. I think of him with the Eagles.
Yeah,
I think of Jeff Fiegels with the Eagles, and somebody, but he plays for a long time for somebody else. I just can't remember who.
Let me see. Let me look it up right quick because I know he was with the Eagles forever. Maybe the Cardinals or something.
That sounds right.
Let's see. Maybe the Cardinals. Let's see. He played from 88 to 2009. Damn.
See.
Let's see. He played with Philly. That's where we know him from. Then he played with the Cardinals a few years. Then he played with the Seahawks a few years. Then he played with the Giants the rest of the final 7 years of his career until age 43. But he was the master. He was the master of the coffin corner kick.
Okay. So who's your return guy? I think I know who it is, but who's your return?
You're wrong. I know you're thinking Devin Hester, right?
Yeah, I am thinking
absolutely
Devin Hester.
Not. No, I didn't pick Devin Hester. I picked the guy who I feel he's the originator and he's a better overall football player. And then in our neck of woods, Plaquemine, Louisiana, Brian Mitchell, baby.
Okay.
Brian Mitchell,
yeah. Okay.
He's the guy whose records Hester broke, remember? All of the return yards and all of that. And I just think also he was just a football player. If need be, you can bring him off that return team and put him in the backfield, and he could make some things happen for you, running the football and especially catching out of the backfield. He was just a better overall. To me, he was even though obviously Hester was a better returner. Yeah. I think Brian Mitchell is the second greatest returner of all time, and he's a better football player. So I just wanted to give Brian Mitchell some shine.
Okay. Now to round out everything, we got to have some people to coach this team, right? My head coach, who else would have the guts enough to tell Tom Brady that he's the backup? And that's none other than Bill Belichick, the winningest coach, won more Super Bowls than any other coach. Many people consider him the greatest coach of all time. I don't. I think Vince Lombardi is the greatest coach of all time. But Bill Belichick is my head coach. My offensive coordinator, of course, is going to be Don Coryell. Of course it is. With the type of offensive personnel that we have, You don't know who's getting the ball. And he's the type of offensive coordinator that I love. Why? Because he once said while he was coaching at San Diego State, if you told the defensive coordinator, damn it, if you can't stop him in 3 plays, let him score so we can get the ball back.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of defensive coordinator, my defensive coordinator, if he was ever a head coach, it was only for an interim basis. But he's known as a defensive coordinator, none other than the great Dick LeBeau. From the Pittsburgh Steelers, the developer of the zone blitz defense, the zone blitz, the architect of Blitzburg in the 1990s. And with the defensive personnel that I have, we hitting and we blitzing. You know, we blitzing on every play if we have to. You know, but that's what we doing. And we got the horses behind us that can cover. So that's who I have. My coaching staff, head coach Bill Belichick, offensive coordinator Don Coryell, defensive coordinator Dick LeBeau.
You can't go wrong with any of those. And then Dick LeBeau is one of the few people to make the Hall of Fame as both a player and a coach.
Yep.
You know, just awesome player, and then crazy, just as good, if not a better coach. Don Coryell, enough said. Just sling it some more, then sling it some more after that. And then you got Bill Belichick, who's a great coach as well. You know, so yes, can't go wrong with those.
Okay, so who you got as your coaching staff? I'm curious to see what this is because you got so much to choose from.
My coaching staff, head coach, the late great Bill Walsh, head coach.
That I did not expect. I did not expect you to go Bill Walsh. Go ahead.
Bill Walsh, the late great Bill Walsh, is my head coach. Then the offensive coordinator. It's kind of weird because we got one another's disciple on our coaching staff. From our offensive coordinator, he's a Coryell disciple, and none other than Joe Gibbs.
Joe Gibbs,
you know, he's arguably in terms of, and it's either he and this next guy in terms of who's the best at turning chicken crap into chicken soup. You know, and my defensive coordinator is your head coach's mentor, Bill Parcells. You know, so I have Bill Walsh, Joe Gibbs, offensive coordinator, and I have Bill Parcells. And Joe Gibbs and Parcells in particular, they were just master motivators, master X's and O's guys, and they were masters at rebuilding, just you know, taking crap.
Right.
And getting some winning out of it. They were the masters of that. You know?
I thought you would have had Parcells as head coach and Walsh an offensive coordinator. And for defensive coordinator, I would have to think about maybe Buddy Ryan, you know, as your defensive coordinator, you know, possibly maybe even Dick Vermeil as a defensive coordinator.
He cried too much. So, ain't no time for crying in this game. And then with Buddy Ryan, man, we already got Darren Sharper on there, man. So I can't have both him and he and Buddy Ryan, because you know, especially Buddy Ryan know what he's done. I can't have that blow up on the sideline.
Yeah, because we know Buddy Ryan will throw some licks on the sideline. Just ask Kevin Gilbride.
Like, man, you ain't nothing but I ain't one of your girls. Not to make a joke of the situation, but I'm not. You know, I'm not one of your girls. Let's just put it that way. I'm not one of your girls. You know, I'll punch you in the face like they should have. You know what I mean? So I can't have both Sharper and Buddy Ryan on the same sideline. That's just Parcells is bad enough because that's a fight waiting. And I couldn't have Dicker because Dicker definitely would fight him for sure. You know, so which he should.
Yeah, for sure. You know, for sure, man.
You know, which he should for sure. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's that, man. So
yeah, man. This was a very, very good show, man. I think very good episode, man. And you know, and just to go through it, just our starters. If you want to go back and rehash who your starters are going to be. My starting quarterback is John Elway. My starting tailback is LaDainian Tomlinson. He's going to be running behind my fullback, which is Christian Okoye. My two starting wide receivers, Tim Brown and Charlie Joyner. My starting tight end is Antonio Gates, slightly over Kellen Winslow. My starting offensive line is Anthony Munoz, Bruce Matthews, Dwight Stevenson, John Hanna, and Jonathan Ogden. That rounds out my offense. Defense. My starting defensive ends, Bruce Smith and Dwight Freeney. My starting defensive tackles, Joe Klecko and Chris Jones. My starting linebackers, Ray Lewis, Junior Seau, and Derek Thomas. My corners, Rod Woodson and Champ Bailey. My starting safeties, Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu. And my punter, Ray Guy, kicker, Adam Vinatieri, and my return specialist, Dante Hall. Head coach, Bill Belichick, with coordinators, Don Coryell on offense, and Dick LeBeau on defense.
That's what's up. Great ball club. For me, really quickly, starting quarterback, Joe Montana. Starting running backs, we got Walter Payton and Emmitt Smith. Wide receivers, we got Jerry Rice and T.O. Offensive tackle, Willie Rofe, Jackie Slater. Offensive guard, Larry Allen and McDaniel from the Vikings. Tight end, I initially picked Jason Witten, but I'm going to take your suggestion. That would be Mark Bavaro now.
Okay.
For linebacker, my starting backers will be LT, Lawrence Taylor, not LaDainian Tomlinson. Lawrence Taylor. The LT, and then Mike Singletary and Derek Brooks. In terms of my defensive ends, it will be Richard White and Jack Youngblood. Defensive tackle will be John Roundel and Aaron Donald. Cornerbacks, Deion Sanders and Darryl Green. Safety, Ronnie Lott and Brian Dawkins. Then kicker, Morton Anderson. Punter, Jeff Fiegels. Returner, Brian Mitchell. Coaches, head coach, Walsh, Bill Walsh. I'm about to say Steve. Bill Walsh. Offensive coordinator, Joe Gibbs. And my defensive coordinator will be none other than the tuna himself, Bill Parcells.
There we go. And that's it. That is our Historically Speaking Sports Pro Bowl selections. A lot of Hall of Famers, a lot of iconic players that we've picked from 1980 to the present. And that will do it for this episode. And we're going to be right back right after this short break to close out the show. You're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports podcast right here on the Sports History Network. Thank you once again for joining us here on the Sports History Network's Historically Speaking Sports podcast. Once again, this podcast comes to you from the Bill King Memorial Studio in the sports wing of TM4 Enterprises, located in suburban Atlanta in the shadow of Stone Mountain. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to the show so you get new ones anytime they post. And as always, tell people about us. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors. Hell, tell a passerby on the street if you think that they like sports history. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. And until next time, we'll see you later.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude. And I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. we wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.